Hey, you ever seen a wealthy person or a wealthy family or a jet owner? Like, I got a jet, I'm sorry, you know? You ever done that, seen that, and wondered, what would they do? What did they do to
A cliff face, it's potholed, it has hairpin bends, it's dusty, and it's very susceptible to poor weather conditions such as fog, tropical downpours, and landslides. On top of that, the nearest ambulance crew are 2 hours away. Coming into number 4, we have the ghost of the tsunami. Japanese cab drivers in Inishimaki have been complaining of hauntings in their cars since 2011. It seems that following the devastating tsunami of that year, a lot of drivers, especially cabbies, have reported seeing people by the side of the road looking for a ride. Now, cab drivers who have stopped to take in these passengers then find that they disappear a short way into their journey. It seems the phenomenon was caught on camera in 2012 as CCTV at a taxi rank in Japan showed a woman approaching and passing through a car. It seems that the tsunami was so sudden that many people on foot were swept away and killed. 6,000 people were killed in the Inishimaki area alone. Coming into number 3, we have fresh blood. In a Reddit thread, drivers answered a post that asked what the weirdest, scariest thing was that had happened while they were driving. Redditor Eolond wrote that they were driving with their friend in the middle of nowhere. They said they were driving at around 1 in the morning, and as they drove, they discovered a huge swath of blood. They said a few seconds later, there was another patch totally covered in blood. They wrote that at the time they figured that someone must have hit a deer, although they were weirded out that actually there didn't seem to be any car damage or any sign of a carcass. In their teenage imaginations, shortly after, they freaked out that someone was bleeding in the woods or there was a killer on the loose. Honestly, if I was driving and I saw a whole load of fresh blood, I would be super freaked out. Coming into number 2, we have New Jersey's Route 23. Is it me, or is New Jersey the weirdest and most haunted state in the whole of America? Honestly, there's so much creepy stuff going on in New Jersey. So maybe the locals are used to all of the spooks, but if you're not local, you do not want to drive along Route 23, ever, let alone at night. The stretch in question is Clinton Road, a 10-mile run between Newfoundland, New Jersey and Upper Greenwood Lake. Along this piece of road, drivers have spotted anything from ghosts, ghouls, witches, demons, satanists, and members of the Ku Klux Klan. Most popular are the legends of ghost vehicles, a Camaro from a fatal crash, and a phantom truck. It was also along this road that a body of a man was found in 1983 by a passing cyclist. An autopsy of the man showed that he had died of foul play and that there were ice crystals in the blood vessels near his heart. The death led to the arrest of a member of the mafia, Richard Kalinsky, in 1986. The killer was local and was said to have chosen the stretch of road to dump bodies. Now, the road also seemingly runs through the middle of nowhere and is home to America's longest traffic light wait, which means you could be stuck on this road stationary for a full 5 minutes. Now, I wouldn't want to be exposed to all manner of spooks just waiting in my car. No. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the Q8 Creep. A video was uploaded to YouTube in January 2015 from a car's dashcam in Kuwait. I can't speak Arabic, so I'm not too sure what's being said in the video, but basically the driver sounds truly and utterly terrified. The driver starts the footage as he sees a white figure in the road. Check it out.
Would you believe that doing a simple 5-minute trick just once a day can raise your credit scores into the 700s and even 800s range, no matter how low your scores might be now? It's true. And if you're one of the millions of Americans with a credit score lower than you deserve, or if you're thinking of someday owning that new car, new home, or building a better financial future for your family, you'll surely want to see this. You know, I implemented 3 simple steps for just 5 minutes each day, and it really raised my credit scores up high. Number 1, I started tracking my scores and reports with all 3 major credit bureaus. I had no idea how quickly my scores could change in a month or even a week. Number 2, I made a decision to take matters into my own hands. That's not to say I don't value these experts trying to help out people who are struggling. I just decided not to settle for a bunch of outdated and hopeless advice like, just pay your bills on time and this is as good as it's gonna get. I wanted my scores to go up, not just stay the same. Number 3, I stopped listening to conventional credit wisdom and instead used a simple little known credit score trick to turn the game around in my favor. And boy, did it ever pay off. You know, I thought I took pretty good care of my credit overall, but I had no idea how one single credit mistake I'd been making ever since the day I swiped my first credit card was actually holding me back from the scores I truly deserved all these years. And within a matter of weeks after using this simple 5-minute credit trick each day, I eliminated this one mistake.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
The driver starts getting really terrified with the figure, and it kind of looks like a hunchback old woman with long black hair. Now she starts running towards him as he's trying to reverse away. Have another look. Honestly, if this is fake, then the guy behind the wheel is a great actor. To me, this looks like a road witch. That's my only explanation. Is a road witch a thing? I think so, because there she is. Coming in at number 10, we have this story of the delivery man. Of course, this creepy story happened around Death Valley, a hot and sparse desert in East California. This story comes from a Reddit user who shares an experience their parents had around 20 years ago. They said that their parents were planning on a weekend trip to a hotel around 30 minutes outside of Death Valley town, right in the middle of the desert. When they got to the place they were staying in, it looked totally abandoned. The dad got out of the car to look around and the mum stayed inside. Out of nowhere, a guy holding a bunch of newspapers turned up and started approaching the mum, whose window in the car was open. He said that his motorbike had broken down and that he delivered papers to Death Valley town. If he didn't get them there, he would lose his job. The mum couldn't see the motorbike and had a very bad feeling about the guy. Now the guy begged her to let him in the car and she refused. Eventually the dad came back around the corner and the paper delivery guy looked panicked. He dropped his papers and ran off into the desert. When the mum and dad went to check into the hotel, the receptionist told them that actually I don't get newspapers delivered to the hotel at all. When they checked the newspapers, they dated back to 1954. Now I'm wondering, was he a murderer or a local ghost? Coming into number 9, we have the Norwegian mountain menace. This story was posted by Tonbury King on Reddit. They said that they and their buddy decided to go on a late night drive into the Norwegian mountains to watch the sunrise across the land, which sounds really nice. He said that the drive up the mountain was very enjoyable and there's also a bar at the top. Although they knew it would be closed, they thought they could sit on the benches, have a little smoke, have a little chat and just take in the view. On the way up, they saw a person sitting on a boulder. They only realised what they saw after they'd driven by, and as it was late and the roads can be a bit treacherous, they thought they'd reverse back and see if the person was okay. This is just classic Norwegian politeness, and good on them. Unfortunately, their act of kindness led to some serious spooks. They saw the person was a woman with a long white dress and long, beautiful hair. She turned to look at them and they called out to her. I'm gonna read what the Redditor wrote here. Her face was 3 times the length of a normal person's face. Her eyes were completely blank and she had a smile on her face. Creepy. The Redditor also said that they were nearly paralyzed with fear, but they drove on anyway. The next day, both of the guys in the car contracted a high fever that lasted for days. Coincidence or maybe not. Coming into number 8, we have the midnight scratching. So this story comes from a Reddit post around 4 years ago. It seems that a guy was driving back from a family reunion. He decided not to stay the night because he had to work the next day. After 45 minutes on the road, he said he felt a very big wave of tiredness come over him. He simply couldn't operate the car anymore, so he decided, do you know what, I'm gonna have a nap. There was no lay-by or any place that he could park off the road, so he decided to drive into a field and park his car behind some trees. He then fell asleep at 11:20 but was woken up 30 minutes later by a scratching sound. He was really tired, he had a quick look at the clock and he decided just to ignore it, assuming it was probably an animal. He then went to sleep but was awoken by the same sound around 50 minutes later, and this time he was super freaked out. He thought actually maybe it wasn't animals, because why would they continually scratch for an hour? He looked into his rearview mirror and he saw someone or something running off into the forest. He decided to drive and head back to the road. He was done with this. As he drove forward, he saw an abandoned car with its doors open. Now he drove a little closer to investigate, and then a man came sprinting around the corner, yelling at him to get away from his car. The guy was pretty terrified and drove off. He said that the moral of the story was not to go sleeping at the side of deserted roads, and I've got to say, hear hear. Coming into number 7, we have the pickup trucks. This story was submitted to the subreddit Let's Not Meet. A girl and her friend Amy were driving from Redizo to Albuquerque. As the girls loved exploring, they took the NM55, a more remote road. They saw a white pickup truck ahead of them in the distance, and when they got closer, they saw that the truck turned across both lanes and then pulled over across the road. When they drove by, they noticed that the driver was a middle-aged guy who was staring at them very, very intently and talking into a walkie-talkie. When they passed him, he pulled back on the highway and started following them. They then noticed another pickup truck slowly coming towards them. Now this one was an older, more beat-up truck. When they passed it, they noticed that the guy was also talking into a walkie-talkie. The truck passed and then turned to follow them behind the white truck. The white truck then tried to bump them, but they kept on speeding faster. It then became apparent that the trucks were trying to get the car in between them. Now luckily for the girls, a US Park Service car came off a little side road, and then both of the trucks U-turned. The girls were freaked out though, and they had no idea what the intention of the truck guys were. Coming into number 6, real life could be scarier than any movie. Apparently so. Now this story comes from a road trip from 29 Palms, California to Albuquerque, New Mexico. The driver went through Amboy, a ghost town well below sea level and reportedly a location for satanic activity. The driver stopped by the Amboy sign to take pictures to show friends. As they drove forward through the deserted town and onwards through a canyon, they saw a red car stopped in the middle of the road. As they got closer, they saw a suitcase and 2 bodies lying face down. Feeling truly freaked out and uneasy, obviously the driver drove on, pulling out their 9mm pistol from under their seat because they really had a niggling feeling that it was a trap. I wouldn't stop. I mean, I would call the police later, but this is a lot. When they passed the scene, they then looked into the rearview mirror and they saw that the so-called bodies were getting up and around 20 people were emerging from long grass. The driver then hit the accelerator and motored forward. Now they recalled their experience saying, "I will never know what would have happened to me if I'd gotten out of the car. Somehow, I don't think it would have been very good. Sometimes real life can be scarier than a movie." I agree. Honestly, sometimes my life is scarier than a scary movie. Coming into number 5, nothing good happens after 2 AM. I feel like this was an episode of How I Met Your Mother. Either way, sometimes I have to agree. A guy wrote a long and winding tale about a trip he took from Nashville to Kentucky and back again. He'd got into a fight with his girlfriend and he'd wanted to drive to blow off some steam. As he was headed to Alabama, he realized he was running low on gas, so he pulled off Interstate 65 and drove off the ramp near a gas station. This is when he noticed something very strange. The only other car on the road was stopped at a green light. It was after 3 AM and the guy driving figured it was weird, but might just have been because the other driver was tired. When the light turned red, the car rolled forward, pulled under the overpass and turned its lights off. The driver didn't want to go forward when the lights went green again, so they waited. When the lights went green a second time, they decided, you know what, they're just going to move on, and the guy then started following him. When he got to the gas station, there was also a police officer. Now he thought, well, maybe I'm going to be safe. That being said, the stalker also followed him into the gas station, parked and got into the lineup. After the road tripper paid, the stalker also left the line to follow him again. Now the driver said he sped through some red lights on his way home, and it's still the creepiest thing that's ever happened to him. So I visited the Golden Gate Bridge in December and it was really, really beautiful. That being said, I did have a scary time there, but that is a whole different story for a different day. At number 4, we have the story of the Bay Bridge. So San Francisco has a number of beautiful bridges, including the Bay Bridge and the famous Golden Gate Bridge. A man and his granddaughter were driving the epic route from San Diego to Portland, and they were stopping in San Francisco. They drove over the Bay Bridge and were struck by a diversion. The diversion led them into a district of a town with no streetlights and a very, very eerie vibe. The roads were deserted, but not just that, the streets seemed deserted too. A car drove.
Johnson, you're fired.
Why? It's not you. It's your shirt. But it's Casual Friday.
Well, you've taken it too far. Look at Gibson. He's wearing a true classic tee. It fits him tight in all the right places.
By, but it was a Japanese model 1930s car. Eventually the detour took them over the Golden Gate Bridge, which was very dark with not even the toll booths open. The granddaughter, Kate, who was driving, started to go over the bridge, but she said she felt a force with her in the car trying to turn her around. Eventually, she managed to shake it off and drive forwards. And when she spoke to one of her friends who lived in San Francisco about the experience, they said that the Golden Gate is never dark, it's always lit up, and that area couldn't have been deserted as there was a festival on in town that day. Spooky. Okay, we've had loads of fun with Reddit here, but let's move on to some news-officiated real-life road trip stories that made national headlines. Coming into number 3, we have the murder of Peter Falconio. This story scares me so much as it is so simple and so easily replicated. On July 14th, 2001, Joanne Lees and her boyfriend Peter Falcono were driving on the Stewart Highway near Alice Springs in the Australian outback. Road tripping around, the couple in their 20s were enjoying a backpacking vacation in a VW camper van. As they were on the road, a driver in a Toyota 4-wheel drive flagged them down. He said he'd spotted that they had engine trouble and Peter got out to investigate while Joanne got into the driver's seat to rev the car. That is when she heard shots. She was terrified, and then the man reappeared at her window holding a gun to her head. Now he managed to tie her hands behind her back with cable ties and was dragged into the back of a man's car. When he was distracted, moving Peter's body, the girl then fled into the bush, fearing for her life and fearing she was going to be raped. She managed to successfully hide, and the man looked for her, passing close by, but he never found her. He later drove off with her boyfriend's body. Later, Joanne flagged down a road train driver who rescued her. Now, the body of Peter Falconio has never been found, but the killer was later identified by DNA on Joanne. John Murdoch was found guilty and sentenced to 28 years in prison. So not all road trips are taken in cars. A lot of cyclists take road trips hitting the pavement with 2 wheels. Sometimes it can be the ultimate way to experience the open road. Unfortunately, what this cyclist discovered will haunt them forever. At number 2, we have the Annecy killings. The Al-Hilli family were on a holiday in France and taking a road trip through the Alps when they were shot in their red BMW. Parents Sad and Iqbal's mother were killed. The family's 2 daughters were wounded but luckily survived, although their 4-year-old was found hidden under her dead mother's legs 8 hours after police got to the scene. Next to the car, a French cyclist, Sylviane Mollier, was also shot dead. The scene was discovered by another cyclist, Brett Martin, who rode by the horrifying scene. While the murder investigation was opened, the perpetrator of the 2012 attack has not been found. Some investigators think that the murders were random, which is scarier because there could be a deranged killer waiting to strike again. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders. I would never hitchhike, but probably only because of stories like this one. I get it though, it's a cheap way to take a road trip. In the 1970s, there were no real frame of reference as to how dangerous hitchhiking could be, but then the murders started happening. Between 1972 and 1973, 6 women were found dead and naked in rural areas near creeks next to roads. All of the bodies were of females. They were hitchhikers who were traveling around Sonoma County and Santa Rosa in California. The murders are still unsolved to this day.
Starting us off at number 10 is Route 666. What a fitting number. Also known as the Devil's Highway, Route 666 is a 200-mile north-south carriageway that goes through New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, etc. And funnily enough, the route was renamed to Route 491 back in 2003 because of the original satanic associations and the fact that so many accidents have taken place on it. Every time a fatal or non-fatal accident has happened on the road, it's always been blamed on the name of the road, not maybe someone with a DUI or anything, but the name of the road. Everyone just assumes something paranormal is definitely at play here. Many Native Americans believe skinwalkers are the reasons for all the accidents because they appear out of nowhere and so suddenly, so cars just have to swerve out of the way. Shamans even warn drivers not to continue, but then would have to be summoned to take the lives of those who did not heed his warnings. If skinwalkers aren't bad enough, even hellhounds have been noted to patrol regions of the road in packs. Witnesses have said the hounds have kept pace with the cars no matter how fast they were going. And of course they can also shred your tires with their claws or teeth, or both, and then proceed to maul you inside your car. Paranormal aside, even mechanical failures seem to be more common on this highway than others. Flat tires, overheating, breakdowns, everything apparently. There's even a haunted truck that collides with cars on purpose to run them off the road, which is just personally just not what I'm looking for on a road trip. That's just not really my vibe, personally. Coming in at number 9 is the hitchhiker, and I'm pretty sure everyone has heard some type of variation of this one, so let's just get into it. This legend centers around some mysterious hitchhikers which we already know we shouldn't be picking up or giving a ride. A cab driver found someone dressed in all black with a hood over their face looking for a ride. He picked them up and the person gave an address the driver wasn't familiar with but assured him he could give him directions. They get further and further out, taking back roads and alleys, and eventually they're out of the city completely. Rattled, the driver asks if they're going the right way, to which the person says, "Don't worry, we're almost there." They end up on a road that's basically falling apart, and at this point the driver finally turns around to ask where exactly they're going, to find the back seat empty, and by the time he turns back around he realizes he's heading straight for the edge of a cliff and plummets to his death. Now I'm not sure whether this legend is supernatural in any way, like is a hitchhiker a real person, are they a ghost, how did they vanish from the car like that, I'm confused. Either way, just be very wary when you're picking up hitchhikers. Actually, just don't do it. Don't do it. At number 8 we have the waiting car, and apparently this has happened to many people on road trips. But let's look at one family's experience in particular. Every summer this family would go on a road trip from North Texas to Mexico, and when you're on a stretch of highway in the middle of the desert, it's not really a big deal if the same car has been behind you for ages. I mean, there's not really anywhere else it can go. So at this point the family had been in Mexico for an hour but had a few more hours of the drive left. The user's mum suddenly goes to her dad, "Miguel, that car behind us, it's been behind us since we left Laredo." And the dad responded with what I said earlier about it not being that big of a deal. But then eventually the car behind them started getting closer, and at one point it was practically touching their rear. The other car was playing with them, it would ease off them, then blind them with their headlights, then tailgate them again, etc. And thankfully the mum saw a police car up ahead and they pulled over. After telling the cop what happened, the policeman told them how people had their cars stolen on empty highways by criminals and thugs. He drove behind them for a while for safekeeping, and around 10 minutes later they saw the same car from before on the side of the road waiting for them. Filling our number 7 slot are Hell's Angels. So originally people thought this myth or legend originated sometime in the 90s in LA, but apparently it started in the early 80s in Montana with the Hell's Angels biker gang as the centerpiece. It goes like this: if you're ever driving home late and you pass a car that has its high beams on, as a courtesy gesture you would usually flash your high beams at them to let them know so they stop blinding every driver passing them. But in this instant, a car with high beams on isn't just accidental. If you flashed your high beams at these cars, that was basically you signing your own death warrant. Cars like that were usually driven by initiates for local gangs, mainly Hell's Angels, and their initiation, I guess, was for them to kill you. So next time you decide—
The truth is, you're not the same person that you were back then.
I guess that's true. I just feel like I've lost myself. And I'm not sure how to find my way back.
Well, that's why you're here.
We found Sprizzy through a Google search, pretty much. I was looking for a way to market our YouTube videos in a, I guess you'd call it a correct manner. Sprizzy's something completely different. What Sprizzy does is they have a network of places that they use your video as an ad. They put your video in front of the people that need to see it and that are going to come back and continue to consume your content. And man, it's been great. They're super responsive. They've been nothing but helpful to us, and this has been nothing but a good experience. So check out Sprizzy if you're trying to get some extra views, extra subscribers that are going to last, and they're not just that fake made up stuff. So we're at 444. I think at the beginning of this campaign we were sitting right at 150. So you're talking about within 2 weeks time we went from having 150 subscribers to 422. We have so many comments from people reacting to this video. It's not just fake people clicking like on your video. It's real people that are really interacting with what you have going on. So definitely come back and check out us, check out Sprizzy. It's a great service.
To go on a road trip, be very careful on who you signal to. Now at number 6 is the petrol pump trap. I think the thing that gives me the most anxiety while driving is running out of petrol and there being no petrol pumps within like a 10-kilometer radius of me, and I'm just like, wow, I'm gonna be stuck here forever, what do I do? But anyway, sometimes finding a petrol pump just isn't that lucky at all. There are so many legends surrounding petrol pumps and bad things happening to people at them, you'd be surprised. Apparently, gas stations are a popular place for people to get ambushed. This story in particular is about 2 girls who were on a road trip and decided to stop for gas at 10 p.m. They found a petrol pump that was for the most part not shady at all. It was brightly lit, looked clean, looked busy with other cars, it seemed perfectly fine. The only open pump was in the middle of the station, so the girl got out to fill the tank. As she unscrewed the gas cap, she heard a shout and then turned around to see a man with a gun and a group of people with him. She soon realized all the cars around her were empty and they were decoys, and it was actually a trap for whoever drove into into it. The man started yelling at her to get onto the ground and for her friend to get out of the car, otherwise he'd shoot them or rape them or worse. Her friend sat frozen in the car, so the other girl offered to go in and talk to her and get her out. But then obviously instead of talking to her friend, she puts the car in reverse and they both managed to escape. That was just one of many stories about things like this happening, so it's definitely not even a legend but a real thing. Coming in at number 5 is Port Perry Ghost Road. Now legend has it that on this road a motorcyclist crashed at night and was killed sometime in the 1950s. Ever since then, drivers on the road seem to see a motorcycle light in their rearview mirror. The light then catches up to the car and passes it before disappearing entirely. Other accounts say they've just seen a red light roaming the road at night, but you somehow are never able to trace its source. Shady. Just pure shady. And many TV documentaries have been made about the legend and it's become quite a tourist attraction. However, with every legend there are skeptics. Locals who have lived in and around the area for generations say there was no motorcycle accident around the time of the legend. Having said that, the Ontario Ghosts and Hauntings Research Society, which I didn't even know existed, maintain that there are ghost lights in the area and a dead body was found in the area in the 60s or 70s, so even if a motorcyclist didn't die, this road really should be avoided at all costs. At number 4 is the cult trap. Again, variations of this legend always float around, so it's hard to pinpoint really which story was the original. But anyway, legend has it that a man was driving through a bunch of rural back roads at night because he thought it would be a shortcut compared to his usual route. At one point, the roads led him to a long road that was surrounded by crops or tall grass. Halfway down the road, they see a car, and in some stories it's on one side of the road, in others it's parked over 2 lanes, but in all variations the boot and doors are always open. Clothes are strewn all over the road and there are 2 bodies on the ground. Obviously the driver's first reaction is to get out and help the people, but when they go to call the ambulance, they realize they have no service. And then things get a bit fishy. Everything just seems too accident-like, almost like it had been staged. Now the next part has many variations. Sometimes the driver just completely avoids the scene and goes around it. Another has him seeing reflections of light on eyes in the grass by the road. But either way, as the person drives away, they see the 2 bodies on the ground getting on their knees and 20 people magically emerging from the tall grass. Had the person stayed, well, we can all guess what would have become of him or her. Filling our number 3 slot is the pavement Bigfoot. I just tried to be creative there, but there's a legend that surrounds Bray Road in the town of Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Even the name of the town sounds Lord of the Rings-esque. But anyway, to any person, Bray Road looks pretty, peaceful, and normal, surrounded by crops and greenery. It looks as good as any road, really. False. By night, the beast of Bray is said to haunt a certain part of Bray Road. Eyewitness reports have varied throughout time, but the beast is meant to have Bigfoot-like proportions, and many have speculated that it's actually in fact a werewolf. But honestly, if you're giving me a choice between running into Bigfoot on my road trip or running into a werewolf, I would honestly choose none and just cancel my trip. Is that not the obvious choice here? I'm not about to get stuck in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin with the beast of Bray Road ready to attack me in the sidelines. That's just a hard no from me, and it should be a hard no from you too. Now at number 2 is Route 2A. Now Route 2A is a dangerous route located in Haynesville, Maine. Now this one is known for the high number of accidents that happen there, the bad driving conditions, and the whole host of spirits that have been seen there over the past few years, or decades really. Great, everything that makes a road not drivable. You know a road is problematic when there's even a song about it called A Tombstone Every Mile. Need I say more? Whilst many people have died in car accidents there, there's also an urban legend surrounding the road. Many people have seen a woman shouting at drivers passing by and saying how her husband is trapped in their car and that they need help. But if you do end up stopping for her, she just disappears. The story goes that the husband got stuck in there and died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and the wife either froze to death outside waiting for help or she was hit by a car. And hence they have some unfinished business with the area. Other accounts have said they've seen a little girl on the side of the road that was killed by a truck years ago. Either way, let's just not. And finally, at number 1 is Shades of Death Road. Honestly, this one can be done in 5 seconds because all I have to say is look at the name of the road, have 1 brain cell, don't travel on it. The end. But no, seriously, Shades of Death Road, real name by the way, is a quiet country lane located in Warren County, New Jersey, and the legends surrounding this road are plentiful. The road runs alongside an old haunted lake bed which has pillars of mist rising from it, and no one knows how that's caused, but it's just there. Apparently, early settlers killed native Indians and threw them into the lake, and their unhappy souls lived on to haunt the lake and the road. Some say they've seen the dead walk alongside the road amidst the mist. People in the area say the sight site used to be the location of so many deaths they thought it was cursed. Another story was that the original people who lived in the area were a band of squatters, of vile men who used to fight each other for women, and those fights would result in someone always dying. As their reputation grew, the area started being called Shades of Death. Another story was that it was actually called the Shades originally because of the low-hanging trees that formed a canopy, which made it easier for murders to happen there and stay unsolved. Either way, whichever story you believe, this road is one you should definitely try to avoid for a plethora of reasons, and I just told you all of them.
When type 2 diabetes drained Tasha's energy, Crystal Run Healthcare helped her get back to living life on her own terms. Watch Tasha's story at crystalrunhealthcare.com/Tasha. The people of Crystal Run Healthcare. Changing healthcare, changing lives.
Starting off at number 10, we have this picture that some believe to be the ghost of a girl called Jane Cherm. Now, the picture was taken in 1995 when the Wem Town Hall in England caught fire. A local man snapped the picture, but authorities said there was no girl in the building either before or after. Instead, people think it was the ghost of Jane Cherm, a girl who died over 300 years before after starting a fire there that destroyed many parts of the town. Perhaps she only appears in the flames. At the number 9 spot now, we have this picture of a ghostly figure scrambling up a staircase. It was taken in 1966 at a museum in Greenwich, England. He thought the picture would just be of the staircase, but was shocked to see what looks like a ghost holding onto the staircase banister with quite well-defined looking fingers. Now, some people say it was the ghost of a maid who died on that staircase 300 years before. Experts said the photograph negatives showed no signs of tampering. Moving on to number 8 now, guys. This picture was taken in 2006 when a photographer was visiting the abandoned Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. Ghost hunters claim that the image of a woman standing on the right of this picture is that of Mary Lee, a nurse at the facility who hung herself in the hospital. At the time, she was pregnant with a baby of a doctor there who had abandoned her. Alright, we have reached number 7 spot, and we have Freddie Jackson. This picture shows a British squadron in 1919. Now, at the very back is said to be the image of mechanic Freddie Jackson. The only problem is, Freddie Jackson was killed days before this picture by an airplane propeller accident, and this picture was taken on the day of his funeral. Some people believe that the ghost of Freddie might not have even known that he was dead at the time and still turned up for the picture as planned. Okay, for number 6 now, this one was so creepy I had to change my shirt. Corey Carlson uploaded this image to Instagram of him in his home. Now, behind him we can see a strange ghostly apparition floating in the middle of the room. Now, Corey did some research and he found an image of the woman who lived in the house before him back in 2001. Her name was Curtis Johnson, and a lot of people were freaking out on Instagram saying that she had the same face as the ghost in the original picture. What do you guys think? I'm so scared I might change my shirt back. Next up at number 5, we have this picture taken in 1963 by Reverend K.F. Lord. He noticed the ghostly figure on the right of this picture after having it developed. In the years since then, there's been a lot of speculation about what exactly that thing is. Those who believe that it's a ghost say it's of a monk or other holy figure standing watch forever over the altar. Moving on to number 4 now, we have this creepy picture from 1959. It was taken by Mabel Chinner, who had just visited her mother's grave. As she walked back to the car, she took this picture of her husband waiting in the front of the car, but also of an unknown figure sitting in the back. The couple said it was the ghost of her dead mother. I'd run if I saw that. Okay, coming in at number 3 now, we have this image from the infamous Amityville house, said to be one of the most haunted in America. While paranormal investigators were exploring it, it was suggested that it's the ghost of John DeFeo, a young boy who was murdered in the house years before. Others say it was just an accidental picture of one of the investigation team. Creepy stuff either way. Moving on to number 2, we have the Pink Lady of Greencastle. This picture was taken at the O'Hare Mansion in Greencastle, Indiana. Before the building was demolished, photographer Guy Winters snapped this image of a translucent figure standing in a doorway, just staring at him. Ghost researchers believe it to be the ghost of Vera O'Hare, a family member of the people who used to own that mansion. No tampering was found on the negatives of the picture, but skeptics still debate its authenticity. And finally at number 1, we have a picture of a being known as the Ghost of Hampton Court. This image you're seeing now was taken by a surveillance camera as part of a series of frames showing a skeletal, almost ghostly figure walking up to some fire doors and slamming them shut before disappearing into thin air. It was nicknamed, appropriately, Skeletor by ghost enthusiasts, and in the years since then,
these are those rhombohedron crystals in your pineal gland. When those crystals become electrically activated, all of a sudden they start calling energy back to them, and they begin to build their own electromagnetic.
countless people have been debating who or even what that figure is.
In at number 10, we have a ghostly follower in the Rockies. Okay, so one Reddit user uploaded a post called "My Dad Had a Follower in the Evergreen," featuring pictures of a ghostly presence following a man. Just some backstory for you guys. iPhones have this new live picture option where they capture a few seconds of footage when you shoot a picture. Just remember that, because it's important. This picture was taken of a man in the Rocky Mountains area of Colorado. He's just there having a lovely time under a tree, but hello, look closer. Who is that in the grass? If you play the live version of the picture, you can even see a figure walking behind him. The man went back to the same spot after he saw the figure behind him to investigate further. The figure looks like it was walking in long grass behind the man, but when he went back and snapped this second picture, you can see that it isn't really that long after all. Was a ghost actually stalking him the whole time? Maybe. And where are its legs? Next up, let's look at a ghost allegedly caught on film. In at number 9, we have the slamming door ghost. This video is in Polish, I think, so it's a little bit difficult to decipher what is actually going on before the alleged haunting. The video uploaded in March 2015 shows a guy, presumably on his computer, when a poltergeist starts kicking off. The spirit bangs on the door and then throws a stack of games off the shelf. The guy in the video runs away out of his apartment, and the poltergeist even follows him, knocking over an exercise bike as he flees. I have to say, this is pretty terrifying. I actually used to work in a theatre in London, and they're really old places filled with high drama, so I can absolutely believe that this next scary ghost was indeed caught on camera. In at number 8, don't laugh because I think it's legit, we have a wig ghost at the Victoria Palace Theatre in London. Yes, a wig ghost. It has been long discussed that there is a ghost haunting the Victoria Palace Theatre in London, especially in the costume department. At the time of this recording, the show Billy Elliot was running at the venue. Posted on the official Billy Elliot YouTube channel, we can witness a poltergeist throwing wigs around the dressing room and even knocking mannequin heads off the shelves. The creepiest part of this whole video for me is one of the mannequin heads at the top left in the middle. Watch it. Yep. It does slowly turn to look at you. For me, yeah, no. Another ghost caught on camera in the theatre is thought to have been a victim of the London beer flood of 1814. In at number 7, we have a scary photobombing theatre ghost. London's Dominion Theatre is built on the site of the fatal beer flood. So back in the 1800s at a brewery, several vats of beer exploded, causing a tidal wave of hundreds of thousands of gallons of beer to surge through the nearby area. 8 people died, including Eleanor Cooper, a teenager working at the pub at the time. It's quite possible that this is Eleanor that we can see photobombing a couple as they sit in the theatre's stall section. The pair are smiling as they prepare to take in We Will Rock You, but the ghost is far from happy. Look at her face. Yikes. From one photobombing ghost to another, next up we have a demonic wedding ghost. My favourite kind. Weddings are a time for happiness and joy, not hauntings. Although this ghost did not get the memo. Newly married couple Kevin and Christina Dennis from Virginia were celebrating their big day when this picture was snapped. On the day, the pair didn't know anything was wrong, but when they uploaded their wedding photos to Facebook, a friend pointed out the ghostly figure between them. I, for one, cannot decide whether it looks like a baby or an evil face with a toothy smile. Either way, no. Just ghost, go away and leave me to getting wed. Next up at number 5, a ghost spotted at an accident scene. If this is real, then this is more sad than scary, but at the same time, actually, it is pretty terrifying. Sol Vasquez was driving by an accident scene in Kentucky and took this picture. After snapping it, he immediately noticed a blurry human-shaped image floating above the scene. After posting the image on Facebook, it quickly went viral, with many saying it was the spirit of the man injured. Sol didn't actually know what was going on. He stated in the picture description that he took the picture from the cab of his truck and he hoped that everyone involved was okay. Little did he know that the accident involved a motorcyclist who was later taken to hospital where they died. Could this have been his ghost or his spirit leaving his body? Could it have been an angel watching over him? Or could it just be a smudge or a photographic anomaly? We just don't know. From a motorcyclist who died in hospital to a ghostly child snapped stalking the halls of a hospital, in at number 4, we have Ghost Girl. A worker at Leeds Infirmary Hospital in Yorkshire, England, snapped a picture of an empty corridor as he was about to start his shift. He was Snapchatting his girlfriend, sending her a goodnight message with visuals of his current surroundings. Sounds weird, but I do that kind of thing all the time. After he took the picture, however, he spotted what looked like a girl wearing a Victorian era style dress walking through a wall. The hospital was built in 1869, so this could be the ghost of a young girl who died here. The worker, Andrew Milburn, said he wasn't a believer in ghosts, but this picture had vexed him. Others who worked in the hospital wing said that they had even heard footsteps in the past when no one had been around. Getting scarier still, in at number 3, we have a ghost in an abandoned mental asylum. Why would someone want to visit an abandoned mental asylum? I do not know. But they did, and they snapped this picture. Do you see it yet? That's right, peekaboo, not so abandoned now, is it? The asylum in Brecon, Wales also used to be a prisoner of war camp in World War II. The picture was taken by a walker named Adam Smith as he strolled by. He said maybe it was a patient who had a lobotomy, or perhaps a soldier patient from the war, or even a Nazi prisoner. Whatever it was, it certainly gave me a fright. When you zoom in on this picture, the spooky figure looks a lot like the Joker. Way too much like the Joker for my liking, actually, so let's just move right on. Creepier still, at number 2, we have Joseph Chancellum's haunted apartment. So there's a guy named Joseph Chancellum who, for a while back in 2012, lived in a pretty haunted apartment. Over the course of his stay, he documented some ghostly goings-on. He uploaded 8 different videos of his hauntings to YouTube, and haunting number 5 is pretty legit. We see Joseph sleeping while someone, or something, turns a light on in the bathroom, then proceeds to turn the taps on. Sure, it doesn't look fake, but it could be. However, I absolutely cannot argue with his video number 7, where he has simply set up a camera on a tripod in the bathroom, shooting straight at the mirror. We can see what's going on in front, and because of the mirror, we can see what's going on behind. I do not see how this can be faked. The video picks up a tap suddenly turning on, then the camera starts shaking on the tripod, even though you can see that there is nobody in the room. I don't understand how those taps must have come on right in front of our eyes, seriously. The video has been watched 400,000 times, and I, for one, am kind of convinced. Okay, so we are there at the number 1 spot, and this video freaked me out the absolute most. In at number 1, we have a ghost caught on camera in an abandoned mine. So there are some videos out there on YouTube and some images that are clearly faked, but I came across this video and I don't know, like, it really freaked me out. It made me feel very uneasy. Uploaded to YouTube by user Exploring Abandoned Mines, a guy explores the abandoned Horton mine. On first encounter, he ventures into the mouth of the mine, and a chain attached to the ceiling starts to swing uncontrollably and unexpectedly. You can't officially see a ghost, but I do have a really bad feeling about what is swinging the chain. There's no real reason for it, and he himself, as he's narrating, is saying that he's feeling pretty freaked out. He was freaked out enough that he went back the next year, and this one just gets even scarier. He goes to the same abandoned mine, he ventures further in, and this time he hears a voice. You can listen to the audio with the dripping of the cave removed on Reddit, and It's really bone-chilling. Some people are saying the voice sounds like, "Why trespass? Are you ready to die? You have came too close to us, now go." A lot of people are saying that this is in a thick French accent. There's then clearly a siren afterwards, and I don't know what's going on, but I do know that I don't want to watch that video ever again. It is spine-tingling, even from the comfort of my own home. But I would say you guys should watch the video just once, just so you can freak out with me right here.
Number 10, The Demon in Loftus Hall. Now, this was from the Celtic Demons episode, aka the 2-hour Halloween special of season 10. A lot happened in this episode, but the most intense moment came right after the lights were turned off in Loftus Hall. So, at that moment, Zach started yelling and said later it was because it was due to losing a sense of self-control. He said he saw strange visions, and this whole thing shook him up for the next little bit. In Loftus Hall, there was also an apparition spotted on top of Zach that drained him of energy to the point that he vacated the premises and threw up. So, a lot going on there, and I feel sorry for Zach because he had to go through a lot on that one. But let's go on and move on to number 9, The Restless Spirits. In the 6th episode of season 1, they go to a former psychiatric hospital. While they are there, towards the end, they catch an orb of some kind going into Nick's head, and Nick says he feels like he was slapped on the face, right on his right cheek, and everyone was shocked when they see a red handprint on his cheek as if a spirit had touched him. So that's a moment where going around former psychiatric hospitals kind of shows you it's a risk to take. But let's go on to number 8, Route 666 Possessions. So this was a Halloween special from season 13, and with number 13 being their season number and it's 13, you know they had to go all out and go to the road with the mark of the devil, 666. So the crew's energy is off from time to time, with the members experiencing a lot of strange activity in this episode. There are whirlwinds of cold air, Billy is seeing things in threes, and there's random touching from non-seen beings and a whole bunch of other stuff. Now the worst of it happened to Ashley. She goes through extreme aggression in what could have been a possession, and it continues throughout. She sees an orb in front of her come to and then disappear, and all in all, the dark attachment on her becomes too much for her to even bear, and after the investigation, she just quits the show. So let's go on to number 7, Letchworth Village. So the group isn't getting too much in this episode until they get a good shot of a dark figure moving behind some exposed studs. You can tell it isn't one of their shadows because the 3 investigators in this episode are all together in this moment. Plus, there's a section of a wall in front of the studs where you can see Nick's unmoving shadow, so playing with the shadows and lights at that time is out of the question. It's the first thing they see in this place, but it isn't the scariest part. Later on, Nick gets pushed out of a room after hearing a female voice say, "Please help." He freaks out a bit, yelling that he felt a push on his back, and then they keep hearing more screams, and honestly this video gives me the chills with how much is going on. But let's not wait and move on to number 6, The Apparition. This one was from their original documentary that was called Ghost Adventures before the actual show, and it's the moment they caught an apparition on camera. They were in Virginia City, Nevada at Washoe Club trying to get evidence of the paranormal. They caught it on infrared camera. So Zach was trying to catch EVPs, or electronic voice phenomenons, on a recording device and walks to one side of the room. Mere moments later, a full body apparition passes through the room in the same direction, kind of along the same path, and it's kind of whack to see. It kind of looks like someone casually strolling through the room, and it's a similar height to Zach. It looks like it just has its hand in its pockets, at least to me. Kind of like it's heading over to say hi to Zach. But another thing to say is it's see-through, and obviously you can't say for sure it's a ghost, but as something that passed by and isn't totally opaque, it kind of gives evidence that it might be something out of this world. So let's move on to number 5. We have The Bridge. Our number 5 is from season 3, episode 3, Poveglia Island. So the Italian government has made it now illegal to set foot on that island because of the amount of bad paranormal experiences that have happened there. So in this instance, this moment, there was a tripod set up on a bridge in front of a field where many plagued people had died. The team caught a movement and some sound, and something was heard running to the bridge and across it. And on its way across, it knocked over a heavy infrared LED light panel. You can hear a buildup of a pitter-patter on the footsteps before the light is knocked over. They think, or thought at the time, it could be a plague victim that was running from the doctor's mask that Zach was wearing at the time. But let's move on to number
elites. Now that we've made travel so expensive, we have this hotel to ourselves. How'd you get here?
Kayak. They compared hundreds of travel sites to find a great deal on my flight, car, and hotel.
Kayak. Search one and done.
Number 4, Upper Fruitland Curse Trailer Happenings. So in this one, one of the scariest episodes, a lot of people say, there is a weird noise caught in the kitchen of the trailer, and then there's a dark entity seen in the backyard. But Honestly, there's no shortage of strange happenings in this 8th episode of season 14, but the scary moment I want to talk about is when two figures show up on the SLS camera. One has no head, which is the one they take to be the faceless boy that the owners of the property were talking about. And then there's another one that shows up after. The headless one is bending both of its knees, and Zach says it seems to be that they are guarding the back of the trailer. All of this makes sense when later in the episode, Aaron is in the back of the trailer, and at that point he hears banging on the trailer similar to what he heard earlier in the car. Obviously at that moment he's shaken and runs out because of all of the stuff that has led up to them kind of realizing the entities are either guarding or within that section of the trailer. But let's move on to number 3, dolls laughing. So during the Island of Dolls episode, which was season 10, episode 4, those dolls were just creepy. The creepiest moment during this episode was when Zach and Aaron were in the doll room. First, Zach was about to take out Harold the doll in the room when Zach suddenly ran out, cats could be heard fighting, and a doll laughs. Then later, they are touching the dolls to investigate them and they hear screams in the distance. A man named Pedro, who had been there before and was moderately familiar with the area, said he had never heard laughter like that from the dolls on the island. And then later in the episode, they're checking the backs of the dolls just to see if there are any mechanical components, and in the one they see, there's wires but attached to nothing. So they don't know where the laughs came from, and it was a very creepy moment, at least for me. But let's go on to number 2, scratches at Bobby Mackey's. So this was from season 1, episode 1 of Ghost Adventures, and it still gives me the chills. During their lockdown at Bobby Mackey's Music World at around 2 a.m., they investigate the basement, and then they investigate the infamous well. At this point, Zach says he's feeling dizzy and has a burning sensation on his back, and then he lifts up the back of his shirt and there are 3 long scratch marks down his back. He's visibly shaken and then shouts, "Did someone just scratch me?" And there's a funny little voice break. Someone pointed that out. But anyways, he keeps asking who's scratching me, and I know I would too, because it was 3 long scratches down his back. And now later on, they talked to, I believe, a priest, and they said that could be a symbol of a demon being there, as 3 is a very common symbol in kind of demonology or demon encounters. But let's go straight on to number 1, where we have the OG moment that probably hooked us all to watch Ghost Adventures, which is the flying brick. So this moment was before the team got their cable TV show and was probably a big factor in the team getting that show. In their original documentary called Ghost Adventures, which I mentioned before, they showed their investigations across multiple locations and culminated at the Goldfield Hotel. So in the basement, as they are exploring, Zach says, "Is that you making all that noise?" And as he gets to the tail end of that sentence, a brick and some other items lift off the ground. So the team runs away and they get separated, and you can hear sections of the team yelling, "Nick, where are you?" And some people say they've heard a girl's voice say, "Don't stop," when his camera points down the hall. And the team did eventually get out, and then they explained why they ran away from what they had been chasing. They were saying, some things are too powerful, or at least that in other words. And yes, when you cannot see what's throwing bricks, I think it's time to know you should get out of there.
Coming in at number 10, we have the never-ending battle. Here's the thing, some ghosts die and then they move on. They spend their time dead to reflect on what life really means, and they wonder about whether or not the life they were living was worth anything. Being dead must really change your perspective. But some ghosts refuse to grow and they stay entrenched in their old ways, even though nothing matters anymore because you're dead. Well, that's what a couple of ghosts have chosen to do. There have been reports of a Union and Confederate soldier who appear on Gettysburg Field and just start charging at one another. They don't care that the war's over. To them, this feud goes way deeper than fighting for the North or the South. This goes all the way down to bad blood. Some ghost enthusiasts speculate that these two ghosts have a personal vendetta against each other, and that is why their ghosts refuse to move on. Their unfinished business is with each other. Coming in at number 9, we have the marching army. If you thought one ghost was spooky, then what about a whole platoon? There has been an apparition of a marching army that has been seen trotting along the fields at night. There's a good chance that all of these men were killed at the same time and now support each other in the afterlife. It's said that this grouping of ghosts could be somewhere around 100 strong and appears to be a grouping of Union soldiers. These dudes believed in freeing the slaves and never letting your boys down, and to that, I salute you. Coming in at number 8, we have the Hotel Dancer. There's more to Gettysburg than just an open field where a massive battle went down. There's also a beautiful hotel, and it turns out that ghosts have decided that they will move in at the hotel. If you choose to stay at the Gettysburg Hotel, be sure that spectral activity won't keep you up at night, because I can promise you there is a lot at this location. One of the most famous is the dancer girl who calls the ballroom home. She has been seen showing off her moves in the middle of the dance floor. Maybe Maybe if you're a good enough dancer, you could walk out there and get down with her. I wonder what kind of music she's most likely to dance to. I'm not familiar with the musical hits of the 1800s. Coming at number 7, we have the Headless Captain. This is a classic of the ghost world, and Gettysburg is such a ghost-infested area that it wouldn't feel complete without it. This story was pulled right off of Reddit. Someone who was visiting the field said that they were walking through and enjoying nice weather on a beautiful day. Even though they came to see some spooky happenings, nothing popped up, but that doesn't mean that they weren't going to take some bawling pictures for the gram. So they took some selfies and then they moved on. Later that night, when a Redditor was going through their pictures, it turned out that they got photobombed by a headless ghost. It's suspected that it was a soldier who might have been decapitated by some cannon fire. Coming in at number 6, we have the horse ghost. Being a spooky dude walking around scaring people isn't something that is only reserved for humans. It looks like some of the better animals from the animal kingdom are getting into this as well. I hope that this trend doesn't spread to other animals. There's nothing scarier I can think of besides a ghost tiger that has a thirst for blood like a regular tiger, but also has all the spectral abilities of a ghost. But for now, it would seem that ghost powers are only subject to prey animals, so we continue to be safe. And one of those ghosts is a horse that has been seen running through Gettysburg Field at full speed. Some people say that this ghost moves so fast it looks like a car zooming through the field in the middle of the night. Some of the spookier tales about this ghost horse say that it has glowing red eyes and will chase down people who are caught walking in the field at night. I think the headless photobomber and this ghost need to team up and become the star attractions of this whole field. It really seems like a missed opportunity. Coming in at number 5, we have cannons and gunfire. One thing ghosts aren't good at doing is forgetting how they got killed. Most of the time they will take that moment to the grave. That means if you encounter one of these boogeymen, they might reenact how they died. That's kind of funny because there are people who love to reenact the Civil War in real life. These ghosts are like, let me show you how it's done. Well, if that's what you're looking for, you're in luck. Some people who have visited the field claimed that they've heard the loud blast of a cannon when no one else is around. People will sometimes even smell smoking barrels from a gun or the stench of a freshly fired cannon. These ghosts really need to chill. I understand that it might be fun shooting off a cannon, but I don't think my ears and heart would enjoy a cannon being fired right next to me. Coming in at number 4, we have the Daniel Lady Farm. Here's a surefire way to turn a farm into a ghostly hotspot. Make it a hospital during a brutal war. The Daniel Lady Farm was a hospital for the Confederate soldiers during this brutal war, and while a few of the men taken there were patched up and then sent back out to battle, many of them were sent there for their last moments. Thousands of men saw the bright light and then didn't move on to the other side while fading away in the barn. Now their spirits are tormented with the thoughts of abandoning their men, and they're still roaming the farm trying to find some sort of resolution. Coming in at number 3, we have the Black Cat. There's a good reason why some people say that black cats are bad luck. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of them are cute as hell and just want to be your pal, but there are other ones that are straight up demons. There has been reports of a black cat that has been seen walking around Gettysburg Field. People say that if you see it and don't follow it, it will eventually vanish and never return. But if you're a cat lover, this little dude will use your soft heart against you. The people who chase this little dude down to give him a nice pat will encounter something much more horrible. People have said that it leads them to some sort of demonic entity. It has been described as a towering shadow, and getting close to this thing gives the person an overall feeling of doom. This cat might be like some sort of lure, like an anglerfish, using something tempting to draw a person in so it can feast on them. This shadow being is thought to be the combined dread of every person who died at this field. All the negative energy has been compounded into one evil being. Coming in at number 2, we have the Weeping Woman. Not everyone who lost their life at war was a victim of gunfire or bayonets. Some of them were caught in the crossfire. There have been several reports of a woman who has been seen walking around crying. She has been heard yelling out the name William and is often seen kneeling in the dirt. It's speculated that she could be the ghost of a woman who ventured into the battlefield trying to find her dead husband. Some say that she might have not even been killed by gunfire or an enemy soldier. No, the story that has been attached to this phantom female is much more depressing. Some think that she was walking through the body-infested battlefield after her husband never returned from war, and she either never found him and wandered the field until she died from exposure, or she found her dead husband and couldn't deal with the shock and ended up taking her own life. And coming in at the #1 spot is the seas of blood. I can't really think of anything more terrifying than this. Picture this, you're walking through an open field. It's a nice day. Maybe it's fall. You have a coat on, all the trees are lovely orange or red, and then you notice something weird. It sounds like you're sloshing through the mud, and it feels like your feet are dragging through ankle-deep water. Then you look down and you see it. The ground is covered in blood as long as you can see. It looks like it's rising, like the blood is going to climb up until it drowns you. And then as soon as it appears, it's gone. There's no blood on you, it was all a vision, and you don't even know if it was real. In fact, you feel a little crazy for even thinking about it. But apparently this is a real ghostly apparition that people will see in this field. Yeah, that's enough for me to say no thank you.
Starting off this countdown, we have the little girl. When Jackie was 8 years old, her parents took her on a tour of one of the oldest homes in St. Augustine, Florida. While in one of the upstairs bedrooms, the tour guide informed them that a young girl passed away in that room, and she likes to come out and play. They all kind of just laughed it off, but a little while later, Jackie was by the window when she felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. She turned around and saw a little girl with long blonde hair wearing a white nightgown standing there behind her. Apparently, the color drained from her face and she was stuck in a trance until her mom rushed to her and snapped her out of it. No, thank you. I don't mess around with creepy little ghost girls. I would have been out of there so fast. In our 9th spot, we have the wet hands. This next individual shared the time when he and his friend witnessed something very creepy. So the guy's name that shared the story is Alex, and he lived with his friend Ed. Now, he had always felt off about the house that they lived in. But Ed wasn't spooked one bit, until one day. So one day Ed was walking up the stairs carrying a glass of water when he felt something cold go through him. This caused him to drop the water. When Alex rushed to see what was wrong, a creepy looking handprint appeared on the floor by the water that had been spilt. They say it was clearly a handprint. It had 5 distinct fingers and everything. They went to go get some towels to clean up the spill, but when they returned, the ground was completely dry. Coming in at number 8, we have the ghost at the end of the bed. So this story comes from a friend of mine. Apparently every night around the same time when his sister was sleeping, she would feel her mattress move, as if someone had sat down at the corner of her mattress. One time when she woke up, she even saw a man sitting there at the end of her bed. Apparently, he likes to just sit there and watch her sleep. Other times, she has come into her room and she has seen an imprint of someone sitting down on her bed. But that's not the only freaky things that have happened in their place. On a number of occasions, they have seen shadows move around their house, particularly the ghosts of their old cats that have passed away. I've told them a number of times that their place is haunted, but no, don't listen to me. In our 7th spot, we have the sleepover party. So instead of gossiping and binge eating junk food like normal teens do at a sleepover, this group of friends thought it would be a good idea to summon an evil spirit. So they started preparing for a seance in their friend's unfinished basement. During this, they were joking around trying to decide who they were going to summon. One of them suggested Jack the Ripper. That's when one girl became very anxious and told them that they shouldn't summon anything evil. As soon as she said that, they heard a man say, "That's right," from the other side of the basement. That's freaky. This is a perfect example as to why you should never, and I mean never, mess around with the spirit world. All you need to do is anger spirits and have them latch onto you and feast on your soul. Making our way down the list, number 6, we have the portrait. This time, we may just have physical evidence of a ghost caught on camera. Back in 1919, a group photo was taken of Sir Victor Goddard's Royal Air Force crew. It's a nice photo, until the crew took a closer look at it. In the background, right behind another man, is the ghostly face of Freddie Jackson. Freddie Jackson was a mechanic who was tragically killed by an airplane propeller. He died 2 days prior to this photo being taken, but I guess he didn't want to feel left out, so he came by one last time for a photo. It's quite creepy, and over the years, of course, people have tried to debunk it, but none have been successful. It's not like they had Photoshop back then. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the voices. Now, this is my personal ghost encounter that you have all been waiting for. So one day when I was young and dumb and spending the night at my friend's house, we decided to fool around with her Ouija board. Don't do it, ever, just don't. After a while of trying it, I got annoyed because it wasn't working, so I ended up kicking the board. Which was not a good idea. Never disrespect the board, because as soon as I did this, there was a large bang on the window behind us. Now the window overlooked her backyard. It was a big window, so if someone banged on it and then ran, we still would have seen them. On top of that, she has motion sensor lights, and those didn't even go off. But that's not the freakiest part. The freaky part is a couple of weeks later, I get a call from my friend. She's hysterical and crying. She told me that she was home alone, but she could hear voices coming from that back room that we were in. Even through the phone, I could hear the voices. It sounded almost as if she had the radio or TV on. I actually thought that she was trying to prank me. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I could hear like a couple of men talking to each other. It was terrifying. So we're both convinced that because I was stupid and kicked the Ouija board, and because we never said goodbye to the board, that a bunch of angry spirits were then released and just chilling in her house. Needless to say, our friendship did not last long. In our 4th spot, we have the man with the black eyes. Children and animals are often very sensitive when it comes to the paranormal. Sometimes they can see and hear things that adults just can't, like in this next story. So Reddit user Fuzzy Bandits shared the time that she was babysitting her young cousin Alyssa. She was giving her a bath before bed when all of a sudden her eyes shot to the hallway and she started crying. At that same moment, the family's dog started barking like crazy and growling at something in the hallway. She tried to calm her down, and when she asked what was wrong, Alyssa said the man with the black eyes was scaring her. When the babysitter asked Alyssa to describe the black-eyed man, she looked up to the 2nd floor stairs. Her eyes got big and she got scared again. She turned back to the babysitter and brought her finger to her mouth and said, "Shh," while shaking her head no. Time to pack your bags and move on out. Moving on at number 3, we have The Friend. Shared by Dr. Stephen Kenyon Owen on Twitter, when he was younger, he used to live with his mom at an old age home. His mom was the manager there, so he lived there with her. And since he was spending so much time there, he got used to some of the old people living there and would often talk to them. One day, Stephen and his friend were out chatting with an old female resident there. When they were done, they said their goodbyes and headed off. But his mom overheard them talking to someone and asked who it was they were speaking to. They told her, and that's when the mom's face went extremely white. The woman they were talking to died 2 days prior. Coming in at number 2, we have The Patient. So this next woman shared a story of a doctor that worked in the same hospital as her mother. So one day this doctor was walking down the hallway when he came across a woman that informed him that someone was having a heart attack nearby and needed help. He rushed to the woman, and when he got there, the woman in need of help was the woman that he just finished talking to. He was so freaked out at what happened that he even checked the CCTV footage. Lo and behold, the footage revealed him standing in the hallway talking to no one. Like, that's so freaky. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Axe Murder House. On June 10th, 1912, husband and wife Josiah and Sarah Moore and their family were found bludgeoned to death inside of their home. But the killer was never caught. To this day, this case remains a huge mystery, and now it's believed that their house is haunted. People that have gone on tours of the house have claimed to hear children's voices and screams. Others have seen objects move and fly on their own. But scariest of them all, in 2014, a paranormal investigator stabbed himself in the house after spending the night there. The freakiest part? The murders of the Moore family occurred at 12:45 a.m. That was the same time that the investigator got stabbed.
Starting us off at number 10 is Botan Doro. Now this one is a very famous Japanese story filled with love, death, and ghosts. And it took place on the first night of Obon in Japan, which is a Buddhist custom honoring the spirits of loved ones. A breathtakingly beautiful woman named Otsuyu and a young girl carrying a peony lantern passed by the house of a widowed samurai called Ogiwara Shinojo. He looked out the window and instantly fell in love with Otsuyu Tsuyu and ran outside, promising eternal love to her. From that day onwards, the two women would visit his house every day at dusk and leave before dawn. One of the samurai's elderly neighbors started witnessing this and got suspicious and peeked into Ogiwara's house to find him in bed with a skeleton. The man ends up warning the old samurai, who consults a Buddhist priest who tells him he has to resist this woman, otherwise he's in grave danger. The priest places a protection charm on Ogiwara's house so the woman can't enter it, but the next day she visits, she calls him from outside the house and he just isn't able to resist. He goes out to her and she leads him back to her house, which is actually a grave in a temple. The next morning, his dead body was found intertwined with a woman's skeleton. Coming in at number 9, we have a woman scorned. You guys know how the saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and I reckon that's completely accurate. Now, back in the day, a boy that used to go to Arkadelphia Methodist College ended up falling in love with a girl that went to a nearby Baptist university. Ah, the cross-religious love affairs. I feel like those never used to end well back in the day, but that's mostly because of the couple's parents, not the couple themselves. Either way, the boy's friends convinced him it wasn't going to work out because of their religions, so in an attempt to get over her, he asked another girl to his homecoming dance. When she found out he was taking someone else, she was so distraught and heartbroken, she ended up committing suicide. Even though the boy didn't even love this other girl, he was just trying to distract himself, and I mean, aren't we all when we get dumped or are heartbroken? The Methodist college he went to is present-day Henderson State University, and students there dub the girl the Black Lady. Every year around the time of the homecoming dance, she wanders around the halls of the women's dorm looking for that girl who stole her lover from her. Honestly, I'd do the exact same thing if I was her. Probably not the commit suicide part, but very much the haunting and looking for the girl who stole my man. Better steal my man? I don't think so. No one's stealing my man. You know what I mean? We have the headshot. I feel like when we're in our teens, we feel love so much more dramatically and deeply. Like anyone I dated in my teens, I was like, I'm going to marry this boy. And anytime we broke up, I would actually be utterly crushed because I was like, oh my god, I lost my soulmate. How am I ever gonna get married now? I'm just not. Either way, got over that. Having said that, back in 1864, a 19-year-old boy fell in love with a woman a lot older than him. She refused to marry him because of their age difference. He was so heartbroken, he shot himself in the head in his bedroom, which happened to be in the governor's mansion. For years after his death, no one would step foot or sleep in his room because they would always hear banging sounds coming from inside of it anytime they'd come close to the door. His room ended up getting sealed off after the Civil War, but was reopened in 1925. It's said that even till this day, people can hear his muffled cries coming from inside the room. See, it's not just boys who are trash, women are trash too. We are both equally trash. Filling our number 7 slot is the Forever Wait. A former Santa Clara house, now turned restaurant, is said to be haunted by a woman who plans on waiting for her man forever. Decades ago, a resident of the house had an affair with a businessman in town from San Francisco. He had to go home but promised he'd be back very soon. Weeks passed and the woman found out she was pregnant with his child. Overjoyed, she couldn't wait to tell him, but weeks turned into months. Completely heartbroken and unable to care for this baby on her own, she committed suicide before she could give birth to it. She hung herself in the house's attic, and that was the end of that. Customers at the restaurant now claim they've seen her ghost wandering around the upstairs area of the restaurant, just staring at the window waiting for this man to come back to her. And plot twist, I'm sorry honey, he's probably never coming back to you. I'm sorry. It's sad. Now at number 6 is Thomas and Lucinda. Once upon a time, a man called Thomas Rowe went to Europe for his studies and fell in love with a woman called Lucinda. Despite Thomas coming from a relatively good family, Lucinda's parents didn't approve of their relationship and banned both of them from seeing each other. The two were heartbroken. Thomas eventually moved back to America, got married, and years later received a letter. It came from Lucinda, who was on her deathbed, and it said this: "Time is infinite. I wait for you by our fountain to share our timeless love. Our destiny is time." How romantic. God damn, I wish someone was that in love with me. I'd honestly be honored. Just forever alone, forever single. Not even salty about it, moving on swiftly. Thomas then goes on to build the Don Cesar Hotel in Florida and includes an exact replica of their fountain. After his death, many guests of the hotel reported seeing the ghosts of him and Lucinda holding hands by the fountain and walking around the area. Love really is infinite. Clearly. Coming in at number 5 is Succubus. Now, if you're unaware, Succubus is a female demon that appears in people's dreams and real life and basically seduces men through sexual activity. So this one was shared by an anonymous girl who said she started going out with this boy who was convinced Succubus was appearing in his life. He claimed he was in the shower once and heard a knock at his door and a woman's voice saying hello, yet when he got out and checked, there was no one there. Weeks later, he woke up in the middle of the night feeling like someone or something was having their way with him, and he described it to his girlfriend in explicit detail. Her, being a paranormal lover, immediately thought of Succubus but decided not to say anything. But then she heard it for herself. A month later, the couple were about to sleep when the girl heard a woman laughing above her head, but there was obviously nothing there when she looked. Her boyfriend started writhing in bed in his sleep while the girl heard more female laughs and moans. So this story just has a happy couple and a home-wrecking demon. I mean, better a demon than an actual girl though, am I right? Hate home-wrecking girls. Just like, mind your own business. What? Get your own man. Demon or otherwise, get your own man. At number 4 is Rob. Now this one's from Kathleen Worstein, who said she met her soulmate Rob when they were both in their 40s and had been married twice beforehand. They dated for 2 months and got married a year later, but sadly, while they were still newlyweds, Rob passed away. But Kathleen found that he never really left her. She would see him appear as a mist beside her, right in front of her in new clothes, talking to her in his voice at night. He was just everywhere. At times of distress, he somehow always managed to get their wedding song playing on the radio for her, and the smell of his cologne just still lingered around their house years after he died. Every night she feels him touch her face the exact same way she touched his in his casket. So I guess true love never really dies, does it? Good on you, Kathleen and Rob. Filling at number 3 slot is Anna. The 1790 inn and restaurant located in Savannah finished being built sometime at the end of the 1800s. At the time, there was a servant girl called Anna that worked at the inn who was already a bride of an arranged marriage. But she ended up falling in love with a sailor who was passing through, and it said when he left she simply could not stand the heartbreak of seeing his ship disappear down the Savannah River, so she jumped out of a 3rd floor window into the brick courtyard below. Others believe her husband-to-be pushed her out of the window after hearing about the affair. After that, she became the inn's most well-known ghost. People staying in room 204 have reported their clothing and jewelry being stolen, being nudged or touched at night. Guests have even seen her figure walking up and down the stairs of the inn waiting for the sailor, or just standing by the window she committed suicide from. Now at number 2 we have Ghosted. So apparently boys ghosting you isn't just a human experience, but a ghostly one too. Didn't know boys being trash transcended that far, but I guess it does. Why am I not surprised, really? Either way, the Goldbrook Bridge, also known as Emily's Bridge, has quite a dark backstory. Now, there are 2 versions of this legend. The first version claims Emily was a young girl who was in love with a boy whom her parents didn't approve of. So to have their happily ever after, they decided to meet at the bridge and run away together. But he never showed up and completely ghosted her, and so she took the rope she had used to tie her sack of items together and hung herself from the bridge. The second version claims he never showed up on their wedding day, and so in a fit of rage she took her carriage to confront him but missed the turn at the bridge, crashing, killing both herself and the horses. Many have reported hearing sounds of a woman screaming on the bridge. Some have even been scratched or touched by her. Others have seen their photographs come out with lit orbs in them or with faint images of a woman's figure in the background. I feel for Emily, I really do. On your wedding day, goddamn! At least tell me a day beforehand. So I don't have to get ready, so I can cancel the event, so maybe I can get my deposit back. Maybe I can get my life back, all the time I wasted with you back. And finally, at number 1 are the lovers of Goodrich Castle. Located near the River Wye in Herefordshire, the castle was heavily bombarded during the siege of 1646. Alice Birch, the niece of a parliamentarian officer, took refuge in the castle with her lover Charles Clifford. But the lovers very quickly realized the castle wouldn't be able to survive the bombardment much longer, and so they tried to escape. They mounted his horse at night and took off and actually managed to pass the Roundhead ranks. But when they got to the River Wye, they didn't realize the storms caused it to swell, making the torrents dangerous and the crossing lethal. Now, as they tried to cross the river, the horse lost its footing and the couple was swept away to their deaths. Their plight was clearly so desperate that their ghosts never really left the castle or the banks of the river. People have seen them urging a phantom horse into the river, and others have just seen a couple staring out from the ruins of the castle.
Alright, coming in at number 10, we have the mystery of the mannequin boat. Following the Category 5 Hurricane Irma in 2017, a ghost ship washed ashore on Melbourne Beach in Florida. Mysteriously, the ship was intact, surviving the intense storm. Named Cucky, the 45-foot sailboat seemed to have traveled hundreds of miles before being washed up on the beach. No living soul was found on board, but 2 mannequins were found below deck, having survived the ordeal unscathed. What they were doing on the ship and what happened to the captain, sadly, we just don't know. Coming into number 9, we have the anonymous Jiang Seng. In March 2006, a slightly rusty ghost tanker ship was found off the coast of Queensland in Australia. She had a broken tow rope, which suggests that she was being towed by another boat and at some point broke loose. There was nobody on board when the Jiang Seng was discovered, but no signs of damage or piracy were visible. At first, sea officers thought the boat had simply got loose and were waiting for someone to claim it. When nobody did, they ran extensive searches of registered ships, but the boat had never been registered. When they checked the ship's engine, it was inoperable. Other than being identified as Jiang Seng, nobody knows where the boat came from. An Australian Customs Service spokesman said, "It really is a bit of a mystery," I'll say. Coming into number 8, we have the mystery of High Aim 6. On January the 8th, 2003, a Taiwanese vessel, the High Aim 6, was found drifting in Australian waters. More in Australia, what is going on? When the ship was broached, there were no souls aboard, yet weirdly, there were no signs of distress. The boat was tugged to shore in Broome, Western Australia, where a forensic investigation took place. However, no signs of the crew were discovered. All that was discovered were 7 toothbrushes and a cargo full of rotting fish. The boat's owner was contacted and he said he last spoke with the captain in December of 2002. One crew member, an Indonesian man, was later tracked down. Now, he didn't provide many details on his survival, but he did say that both the captain, Chen Tae Cheng, and the ship's engineer, Lin Chung Lee, had been murdered. My goodness. Perhaps there was a mutiny on board, or there was a hidden motive, but nobody has ever been able to fully explain it. Australian smuggling specialist Craig Kennedy said, "I've been working with boats all my life and I've never seen anything like this. It's a bloody mystery." Sadly for the boat, it was later sunk off the coast of Broome. Coming into number 7, we have the SV Resolven. The Resolven was a Welsh merchant brig that was found abandoned between islands in Newfoundland by crew of the nearby HMS Mallard. Now, this all went down in August 1884. The drifting ship was in a fine condition, and initially the Mallard signaled to see if the crew were okay. When they didn't get a response, they boarded the ship to find the gallery fire was lit and food had been laid out on the tables. The only thing was, there was no one to eat it. The ship had been completely abandoned. The ship's lifeboat was gone, as was the captain's stash of gold, leading some people to think that, you know what, maybe it was a mutiny. The most agreed narrative is that the crew mutinied, however that doesn't explain why the stove was lit and food was laid out and never eaten. It seemed like people jumped off the ship in an absolute hurry. Now, the 7 crew and 4 passengers were never found, nor was any trace of the missing lifeboat. The Resolven case lay unresolven to this day. Coming in at number 6, we have the SV Carol A. Deering. After passing Cape Lookout in North Carolina in January 1921, the 5-mast cargo boat became wrecked, and basically it was run aground in mysterious circumstances. Her crew and her logbook were missing, nowhere to be found. The mystery of the boat's final voyage is one of the most discussed and written about maritime mysteries of all time. Weirdly, when the North Carolina Cape Lookout lightship spotted the boat a few days before she was found abandoned, the captain reported a thin man with reddish hair and a foreign accent acting strangely. He also noted a number of oddly placed crew members. What happened to these people over the next few days remains a mystery. It is suspected that the ship may have been a victim of mutiny, as it had been reported that the crew didn't very well like the captain, with one worker previously arrested for threatening to get him. Others claim that she was a victim of the Bermuda Triangle. 5 US departments of government ran investigations, as the Carol Deering was one of a number of ships to be wrecked or missing in a short period of time. No information was discovered to explain the wreck and the missing crew. It's still unresolved. We have a nice little urban legend for you to pepper the middle of this list. We have the ghostly galleon of Chapel Cove coming into number 5. I am a sucker for a good ghost story, especially when it involves pirates and treasure. In 1895, an abandoned ship, dubbed the Ghost Galleon, was reported off the coast of Chapel Cove in Newfoundland, a place I've categorically always wanted to visit. Now, this Spanish galleon was said to have been blown off course in the early 1700s and taken over by pirates. The pirates were said to have dispensed with the crew and took the treasure the Spanish ship was hoarding for themselves. Now, according to legend, they buried some of it in Chapel Cove. Now, newfies watching, don't be tempted to go and look for it. It is said that those who go in search of the gold will see a vision of the ghostly galleon and be visited by its dead pirates who aim to kill. Yikes. Coming into number 4, we have the SS Valencia. In January 1906, the SS Valencia was found wrecked off Vancouver Island in BC, Canada. The ship was struck. It had hit a reef in bad weather. Reversed, the crew noticed a large gash in the hull, so they ordered her to run aground to prevent her from sinking. She was stranded on rocks in horrible weather and separated from the shore by 50 meters of choppy water. 6 out of 7 lifeboats were immediately deployed against the captain's orders. 3 flipped while they were being lowered, 2 capsized when they were in the water, and 1 disappeared altogether. 2 groups of survivors made it off the boat, one in the final lifeboat and one by facing the tides and swimming. Of the 56 crew and 108 passengers, 136 people died as rescue teams struggled to get to the wreck. The survivors' awful tales of the ship floundering have marked history. Strangely, as the ship slowly sank, crew of the rescue ship, the city of Topeka, reported seeing the shape of the Valencia in the black exhaust. Reports of 8 skeletons dead in a lifeboat stuck in a cave emerged. Some people even say they saw lifeboats being manned by skeletons rowing in the water. A phantom ship was later spotted by sailors sometime after the sinking. Some even reported human figures holding onto the ship's rigging. Even weirdly, 27 years after the disaster, one of the lifeboats from the Valencia was found adrift in good condition. What happened to it over the past 3 decades, nobody knows. Coming in at number 3, we have the mystery of the Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste is one of the most discussed abandoned ships of all time and a key player in maritime folklore. The real-life story goes that in November 1872, the merchant ship set sail from New York. A month later, the boat was found near the Azores Islands, completely abandoned but in a seaworthy condition. Now, this seemed to rule out bad weather playing a role in the mystery. The ship was filled with a cargo of alcohol and had food and water supplies for 6 months. Again, this seemed to rule out pirates. Inside the boat, there were no signs of struggle or a fray. The ship's lifeboat was missing and the crew were never seen again. Now, this included the revered Captain Briggs and his family. Mutiny was considered as a possibility, but seemed unlikely given the ship's condition. Other theories included foul play by a giant squid and the Bermuda Triangle, or a curse of a paranormal going on, ghosts. The case of the Mary Celeste was so intriguing at the time that it has been frequently mentioned in literature and pop culture. Coming into number 2, we have the Sao. In February 2016, the private yacht of Manfred Fritz Badgerat was found floating adrift in the Philippines. Sadly, the vessel's captain and owner, Mr. Badgerat, was found slumped dead at his desk in the boat, But this is where things get very strange indeed. Bajorat's body was found mummified. Now, people presumed this mummification happened as a result of sea conditions, basically dry and salty air and hot temperatures, which is creepy but explainable. This kind of coincided with the rumor that the German national had been missing since 2009. In the cabin, a letter to his wife who died in 2010 was found, which added to the mystery. Now, his mummified body was found near the boat's telephone system, suggesting that he was perhaps trying to make a final desperate mayday call. The plot thickens still when coroners who performed his autopsy said that he'd only been dead for little over a week. How can we explain his lengthy absence and the fact that his body was mummified? There is almost no way that that could have happened in a week. Now, there are photographs of the state that his body was found in, but we can't show you them in this video. If you want to see them, you can Google them, but I have to warn you, it's not very pretty.
We believe that every American should have the chance to experience the thrill of owning gold, which is why we're giving away these magnificent gold bars for free. That's right, just cover the small shipping fee. Are you tired of the ordinary collectibles that lack value and distinction? Introducing the $100.
Finally, coming into number 1, now this kind of shakes me to my very core, we have the North Korean death boats. Each year it seems that scores of derelict ghost boats wash ashore in Japan. A number of these are thought to be as a result of poor equipment, leading to North Korean fishermen getting lost at sea and succumbing to the elements. The rest are usually the broken boats of deflectors who died in their attempts to flee the dictator-led nation. However, since 2015, more and more ghost ships with gruesome cargo began washing up in Japan. The grisly flotilla of 50 or so ships have washed up in the past few years, containing dozens upon dozens of bodies in varying states of decomposition. Some even arrived skeletal, suggesting they'd been dead at sea for a good number of years. On one occasion, the corpses were even headless, further adding to the mystery. The boat's markings and the clothing of those on board identified the vessels as coming from North Korea. Why they're dead, and even more frighteningly, why some of them were mutilated, we simply don't know.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Heart Feaster. This is one thing that I will never want in my life, and I am pretty confident that it will never happen to me, and that is sleep paralysis. Being stuck in a state where you can't move as you hallucinate in the dark sounds like something so villainous even Freddy Krueger wouldn't do it. He'd be like, at least kill them after, don't just let them sit there all night, that's gross. Luckily, I sleep like a log, so there's no chance anything like that is going to happen to me, but for some others this can happen quite often. When people are stuck in sleep paralysis, it can be something as simple as having the feeling that someone is watching you as you're sleeping, while other people will have the Heart Feaster. A story online talked about a horrible entity that would come visit someone as they slept. They named this beast the Heart Feaster because it would lurk into their room when they couldn't move, and then it would crawl on top of them. The creature looked like its body was made out of a dark crimson, and it had long fingers that were almost like claws. Its face resembled a demon with a long pointed nose and jagged teeth. While this person was stuck and unable to move, the Heart Feaster would reach its long piercing fingers into their chest and pull out their heart and start eating it in front of them. Wow. At number 9, we have the Stalker. This next story was told by a young boy who grew up in a very old house. He said strange creaking noises coming from all over the home at any time of night was very common, but what wasn't common was something called the Stalker. Every now and again he would see something out of the corner of his eye. He wouldn't think that it was anything and he would just go on about his business. That was until he saw it. It was something he called the Stalker. He said it looked like the girl from The Ring, but it was on all fours. When he looked at it, the Stalker just stayed in one spot for what felt like an eternity. The ghost was locked in one spot until it scampered into another room. He told his parents about it, but he brushed it off and said it was a dream. However, our writer was certain that it happened because he went to investigate the spot where the Stalker was, and there were 2 wet handprints on the floor. At number 8, we have a short one. Some of my favorite ghost stories are the short ones. It's impressive what you can do with a few sentences. This one goes like this. I woke to the baby monitor crackling with a voice comforting my firstborn. As I adjusted to my new position, my arm brushed my wife sleeping next to me. Ooh, that is creepy. Coming in at number 7, we have imaginary friends. You would be surprised how many kids have imaginary friends that end up being ghosts. In fact, I did a multi-part series on Most Amazing Top 10 all about this. One One of the most horrific stories I read about this was a young boy and girl used to have the same imaginary friend. It was just a voice that they would hear. It kept telling them to go into the woods behind their home. They would just ignore it and they really didn't think much of it. In fact, they didn't even know that the other sibling was hearing the voice until they brought it up with each other years later. The scariest part about this was when their younger sister, who was just old enough to talk, started saying that she could hear a voice that told her to go play outside in the trees. Ho ho. Coming in at number 6, we have glowing eyes. A girl was walking home late one night and she can feel something is off. She's not sure what it could be, but she knows she doesn't feel safe. She looks back over her shoulder and she sees a tall man in a trench coat who seems to be swaying side to side as he walks towards her. He's about 30 feet away and she can't make out his face except for a massive grin. This is obviously extremely frightening, so this young lady starts to move quickly, but it seems no matter how fast she moves, he keeps gaining on her. Eventually, she starts running and she can hear laughter start to come from behind her. She's now sprinting and looks back over her shoulder to see how close this man is, and the last thing she sees is the man right behind her with his massive eyes that are glowing red. Coming in at number 5, we have grave robbers. This is a pretty famous story about two young boys who wanted to give a scare to their friends. Now, is this story true or is it just an urban legend? It's hard to tell. Apparently, there were two kids who loved to play pranks on people. One day they decided they wanted to play the ultimate prank by digging up a dead body and scaring their friends with it. So they went to the local graveyard in the middle of the night and they started digging. When they finally worked their way down to the body, they started cheering in excitement. The people living nearby heard the noises and they thought that the dead were rising from their graves. They ran and attacked the two boys, mistaking them for zombies. They were both killed and now their ghosts haunt the graveyard. Coming at number 4, we have voodoo priestesses of New Orleans. New Orleans has a long history of voodoo, and apparently there are people who live out in the bayou who have found a way to communicate with the dead. They will talk to the spirits of the dead who have been left to walk the earth without anyone to listen to them. Because these voodoo practitioners have spent the time learning how to talk to spirits, they can command power over them. They can use the dark magic of the dead to cast spells on people, bringing them misfortune. That really sounds like it sucks. Coming at number 3, we have another short one. Alright, we have room for one more short scary ghost story before I hit you with the top 2. I think this one might be my favorite short ghost story of all time, and it goes like this. My daughter won't stop crying and screaming in the middle of the night. I visit her grave and ask her to stop, but it doesn't help. Oh, that gives me goosebumps. Coming in at number 2, we have My Friend in the Basement. A young girl who is about 5 years old moves into a new home with her mom. The two of them love the place, but the mother notices something strange about her daughter. She spends a lot of time in the basement, talking and laughing like there's someone there. Sometimes she'll walk down to check on her to see who she's talking to, and every time there's no one there. One day her daughter comes back upstairs with a bite mark on her arm, and her daughter says, "Richard bit me." Her mom tells her that she is not allowed to play in the basement anymore. Then that night something attacks her daughter in her bed. The mother rushes in the room when she hears the poor daughter screaming. When she finds her daughter, she's still alive, but she has scratch marks all over her body. The next morning the two of them leave the home, never to return. And at the number 1 spot we have the taps. Something that ghosts love to do is turn on the taps and jack up your water bill. If you go online and search for this, you will find countless stories of ghosts who love to mess around with the water. This one was pulled off of Reddit, and it was about a young girl who was living alone, and she was often woken up by the sounds of running water. At first she thought that maybe she forgot to turn off the taps, but it started happening so frequently that she assumed that she was sleepwalking. But then it started happening when she wasn't home. Terrified that someone was breaking into her house when she wasn't there, she called the police. They came to check out the place, but they couldn't find anything. So her next best move was to set up cameras and spend the night at a friend's house. Then she saw it, the taps in the home turning on by themselves. Now it's time to go down the spiritual route and have someone come in and fix the ghost problem. A medium came through to contact the ghost, and it turns out there was a body of a girl who had been drowned in a tub that was in the home, who had been buried under the house. That is spooky.
Coming in at number 10, we have Bloody Mary. Most of us will know the legend of Bloody Mary. She is a mirror-dwelling ghost that is said to appear when her name is chanted again and again as you stare into the reflection in the mirror. The origins of Bloody Mary go way back in old folklore when ye olde women would invoke the ghost of Bloody Mary to show them a glimpse of their future husband's face. Things could go south if they saw a Grim Reaper or a skull in the mirror instead. It would mean that they would likely die before they got the chance to marry. In modern times, the legend goes that if you summon Bloody Mary, she appears as a witch-looking woman. If she's angry with you, she'll scratch out your eyes, steal your soul, drink your blood, all of the dark stuff. I'm sure you'll know loads of people who played Bloody Mary as a kid and maybe they got freaked out and convinced themselves that they saw something, but honestly, I never heard of anyone actually getting their eyes scratched out. The mirror ghost is a popular urban legend across the world. In Japan, they have something very similar in the form of Hanako-san. Coming in at number 9, we have the ghost pushers of Gravity Hill. In almost every ghostly urban legend video I have done, especially those in the United States, there has been a phenomena of a car being pushed up a hill by some kind of otherworldly being. This story tends to involve a car accident in that very same spot and helpful ghosts who want to save you. One example of the legend will be, say, on a rail track. The legend will say that in this very spot 37 years ago, a bus filled with kids died when it got struck on the tracks. Now, if you park the car there these days and wait, your car will miraculously be pushed over the tracks by helpful tiny dead kid hands. Creepy. Too far? Other versions take place on hills where cars have rolled backwards and caused fatal accidents, only for ghosts to remain in that very same spot. There are legends like these literally all over the world. There's Confusion Hill in California, Magnetic Mountain in Canada, Moonbee in Australia, the Magic Route of France, Hangman's Hill in Essex, UK, so on and so forth. They're literally everywhere. Generally speaking, naysayers will claim that these so-called phenomenon are a trick of the light, like water appearing to run uphill. Coming into number 8, we have walking on gravestones. Have you ever felt a shiver unexpectedly? Well, folklore and urban legend have said that if this happens to you, someone has walked on your gravestone. This suggests that somewhere there's a future in which you're dead and buried, but somehow you feel it right now. The urban legend also suggests that we should never step on another person's grave for this very reason. We may send a shiver down someone's spine or anger their spirit, which may just follow us beyond their final resting place. Honestly, beyond that, it's just kind of disrespectful to step on someone's grave. Coming into number 7, we have the ghost train. A classic ghost train. I'm not talking about the fairground ride, although since Goosebumps there has also been a lot of haunted ride urban legends. When I say ghost train, I mean the ghost of an actual train thundering at breakneck speed only to disappear out of sight. Or perhaps strange headlights in the distance near an old abandoned track. Or a smell of a steam engine and a puff of smoke coming from nowhere. There are thousands of ghost train legends. The St. Louis Lights, Stockholm's Silver Pylon, Abraham Lincoln's funeral train, and more. Okay, next up, I will see your ghost train and raise you a scary ghost ship. Coming into number 6, we have the Flying Dutchman. The Flying Dutchman is the most famous of the ghost ship urban legends, and it dates back to the 1700s, a high time for seafaring. It refers to a doomed Dutch man-of-war ship. Tales of the Flying Dutchman are ingrained in seafaring lore, a lot like that of the Kraken. Many sailors have reported seeing a phantom boat emitting a bright light on a stormy night, and it is a bad omen for seafarers. It's become a very loathsome superstition. The Flying Dutchman has regularly been spotted, famously once by King George V of the UK. Some say that they've spotted the ship in the air, hence the name the Flying Dutchman. Explanations include mirages, looming refraction, and simply hallucinations from fatigued sailors. Ooh, I love number 5. We have a theatre ghost. There's always a blooming theatre ghost, isn't there? Old theatre buildings absolutely always come replete with a ghoul. Is it because of the high drama of the theatre? Does it leave an imprint on the building? Or is it because imaginations are high in theatrical settings? Usually urban legends of theatre ghosts go as such. The spirit of a former performer who either died on stage or in a brawl at stage door haunts the theatre for the rest of time. The ghost is seen by actors on stage as they look out to the audience, or they're felt by patrons who sit down, only to feel a sudden rush of cold air as they go by. I personally love a good theatre ghost story. There is the Phantom of the Opera, who isn't actually dead. The many ghosts of the Theatre Royal Drury Lane in London, one of the oldest theatres in the world. We've got the Wailing Woman of Wellington's St. James Theatre. Judy Garland is even said to haunt the Palace Theatre in New York. Theatre ghosts are always always blamed for mischief too. Lights turning on and off, props flying about backstage, things going wrong on stage. Theatre ghosts are usually tricksters and agents of chaos. Honestly, I could stand here all day talking about theatre ghosts. Maybe we should do a top 10 scary theatre ghost stories list. I really like that. Coming into number 4, we have
A male stripper with big dreams takes a protege under his wing.
Wait, what?
The Vanishing Hitchhiker. The Vanishing Hitchhiker is a classic ghost urban legend. In each of the stories, a driver picks up a person thumbing for a lift. They drive them a little way, something spooky and mysterious is said, and then the person in question vanishes. Often, they leave a little clue behind them as to who they might have been. The driver then does a bit of research and finds out that the passenger died along that very stretch of road X numbers of years ago, sometimes to that very day. Spooky. This is such a classic urban legend that most cities have a story like this. In Chicago, for example, they have the Vanishing Hitcher Resurrection Mary. You can hear more about her in our Chicago Urban Legends videos, one of my favorites I've done this year. In Japan, a similar phenomenon is reported with the alleged ghosts of tsunami victims. Cab drivers in Inshinomaki have reported ghost passengers. Do ghosts like cars, or are the Vanishing Hitchers stuff of legends? Coming into number 3, we have shadow people. Shadow people are popular ghost sightings, and we actually did a whole top 10 on this. Some people have described scary shadows as black mass ghosts, negative imprints left on the world from angry spirits. So many towns and villages across the entire world have reported shadow sightings, with some cultures and tribes believing they are demonic spirits. One of the most famous shadow people sightings include the Dark Watchers of Santa Lucia, dark featureless shadows wearing hats and carrying walking sticks that appear silent and watching in the distance of the Santa Lucia mountains. Recently, a black cloud was spotted over a mall in Zambia that some people were claiming was a shadow ghost, or a dementor. Was a shadow ghost the contents of our number 2? We have the ghost in a jar. The ghost in a jar is one of my favourite ghostly urban legends ever. While there have been many stories of spirits being trapped in objects, the ghost in a jar story went viral and inspired imaginations across the world. The story goes that in 2003, TJ101 of Arkansas listed a jar containing, I quote, a black thing. The lister said they dug up the jar near a church in the 1980s, and since then they had been plagued by a black shadow. The jar is painted black and red on the inside and is also covered in strange symbols. If the jar is so creepy, why did it take the owner 20 years to get rid of it? I don't know, but the listing went viral anyway, and somehow the ghost in a jar sold for nearly $51,000 and since has been the stuff of legends. The legend was so widespread and popular, it even became a Rick and Morty character.
Thanks, Ghost in a Jar. You always were good at pointing out potentially obscure comedy.
I feel like the need for a 15-year update on this. Does someone have that ghost in a jar? How does this story end? I need more information. Finally, coming into number 1 of our top 10 scary ghost urban legends, we have the legend of the White Lady. My, if I had $1 for every White Lady ghost I had read about, well, I'd have enough dollars to buy a pretty convincing White Lady costume and go around spooking people and making them think that I myself am a ghost. Anyway, White Lady ghosts are popular ghost tropes and usually have some kind of tragic background of love and loss and searching associated with them. I guess the ghost being in white represents some kind of woeful purity and something unfulfilled. Many are depicted wearing wedding dresses. There are countless tales of White Lady ghosts across the world. In Canada, she is a war widow who threw herself over a waterfall in Quebec City when her lover never came home. In California in the United States, she haunts Calico Ghost Town, a place I actually visited last Christmas. In the Czech Republic, she's the spirit of a cursed wife who haunts a castle. In the UK, she also haunts a castle and has a bounty of hidden treasure. In Malta, she wanders a forest in her wedding dress, and in Germany, disturbing her will get you killed. In Asia, White Lady apparitions are usually much less romantic and far more malevolent and vengeful.
Starting us off at number 10 is the elevator ghost. Now when I first saw this video, nothing was really happening for the longest time, so I genuinely thought it was just gonna be a waste of my time, but then it was like a mic drop happened. To preface this, the owner of the footage is adamant that the footage is 100% authentic and real, so let's just take that and discuss. Now the CCTV footage was from February of 2008, and you can see 2 workers talking while waiting for the elevator. They eventually get into the elevator and talk some more, you know, can't believe we're working overtime again, doesn't the boss suck, I didn't even get a Christmas bonus this year, etc, etc, you know how it is. And mind you, while they're talking, both guys are leaning against a little railing in the elevator. They reach their floor and they both leave, but as the one on the left lets go of the railing to leave, you see this white ghost zombie figure that is left behind, almost like the man was standing in the ghost, or vice versa. The men leave, not even realizing what was in the elevator with them the whole time, and this ghost has its skull hanging down really low and is walking very, very slowly out of the elevator as well. Now, I don't even know how this could have been a hoax, because the ghost is literally there as soon as the man moves. Like, it wasn't edited, there was no compartment it could have been hiding in. I just don't see any fakeness in it, I just see horror. Let me know what you guys think. Fake or nah? Coming in at number 9 is the Brown Lady, and this photograph might be the most well-known ghost photo ever taken. Ever. Now, the infamous picture was captured back in 1936 by photographers who were documenting 17th century Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England for a magazine. It said the photographer Captain Hubert had his head under the focusing cloth, so he wasn't really paying attention, but his assistant Indre Shearer exclaimed that she saw a veiled form gliding down the stairs and told him to quickly take a picture. Now, he took the picture, but when he got out from under the focusing cloth to see for himself, the life form was nowhere to be found, which made him think Indre had made up the whole thing. But when the photo got developed, it was so very clearly in the middle of the staircase that it's actually astonishing. A full white pale shadow of an apparition that people think is Lady Dorothy Townshend. Dorothy died in the early 1800s from chickenpox, but other stories circulated saying her husband locked her in a bedroom forever because she committed adultery. That is a saucy story for a saucy ghost. At number 8, we have CCTV footage. So back in 2014 in New Mexico, surveillance footage at a police station revealed what appeared to be a ghost gliding along from the right side of the room to the left. Now, according to officers, that area was completely secured. The gates were locked, none of the alarms went off or were tripped, so a real human being definitely did not make their way inside. Honestly, I don't know why we're giving this ghost a hard time and calling it out on the news. Like, maybe it was just a law-abiding ghost and it was just patrolling the station to keep it safe. Maybe it was a police officer when it was alive, so it was just having a nostalgic night. We don't know its story. Who are we to judge? Carry on, young ghost. On your way. Do what you were doing. Carry on. Shoo.
Tacos to the chateau, please. Did somebody say?
Filling at number 7 slot is the Baby Crib Menace. Back in March of this year, a couple based in Michigan captured a blurry pale spirit form of some kind moving past their daughter Lily's crib. The footage caught on the baby monitor literally shows a white pale figure gliding past, and the couple even claimed that Lily sustained unexplainable scratches on her body after the incident, which they obviously blamed on the ghost. Nah, B, if a ghost is terrorizing my kid, you bet I would go ghost hunter on its ass and literally find a way to banish it into the ether, back into the afterlife, back to whatever hell it escaped from. Not on my watch, Casper. You ain't getting my kid. No, no. Now at number 6 is Lord Cumbermere. Amateur photographer Sybil Corbett set up a camera at the Cumbermere Abbey Library located in Cheshire, England. She took an hour-long exposure while the funeral of her brother-in-law Lord Cumbermere was happening 4 miles away. Now, the Lord had died in a riding accident and was being buried simultaneously, but somehow when the photos were developed, an apparition can be clearly seen sitting on the seat in the photo, and people speculated that it was Lord Cumbermere since the chair was actually his when he was alive. On the other side, skeptics say a servant entered the room and sat in the seat while the exposure took place, and that's what the apparition was. But most, if not all, the staff was at the funeral itself anyway, and the apparition is wearing a collared shirt, which I don't think a servant would wear or could afford at the time, so I mean, I think the skeptics are very much wrong. Sorry. Haters gon' hate. Haters be sipping on that haterade. Coming in at number 5 is the ghostly pupper. I know this list is meant to be horrifying and scary, but I mean, I found a ghost dog captured on film and it's honestly really cute, so I couldn't not include it. And I know there's enough dog lovers out watching this right now that I'd be forgiven, so I'm not even sorry. So anyway, the story of these dogs was written in the 1939 print of Life magazine, and it goes like this. The owner of this dog actually had 2 dogs, a cute little white terrier and a large other breed of dog, and both puppers were best friends. What a cute story. Sadly, the terrier died and the big dog was absolutely heartbroken, and I mean, that's very understandable. No one's trying to lose their best friend. Now, a psychic photographer snapped a photo of the owner and the big dog, and you can very clearly see the spirit of the little dog hovering on the backside of the bigger one. It's like its head is just resting on the big dog's tailbone, and I thought this was so cute. Like, the little one just misses the big one too. They both just miss each other. It's a very cute, heartwarming story. And we need that for number 5. A nice palate cleanser, you guys. At number 4 is Madonna. Not like a virgin Madonna. She's very much still alive. Let's not get it twisted. This is Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. Now, this photo was taken by the Ghost Research Society of America when they visited the abandoned Bachelor's Grove Cemetery back in 1991. Mary Huff was taking black and white infrared photographs on the site, and despite crazy readings being observed on her equipment, no one saw anything out of the ordinary. But when the film got developed, one photograph revealed a woman sitting on a tombstone on her own. She was wearing out-of-date clothing and was staring into the distance, so we don't really know what was going on with her. Was it her tombstone she was sitting on while contemplating why she was dead? Was she sitting on her mother's tombstone, her father's, her lover's? We have no idea. But she was very clearly captured, very clearly there. What's your story, Madonna? Filling our number 3 slot are the faces in the water. Now, this one requires some backstory, so let's take it back. Back in December of 1924, James Courtney and Michael Meehan, 2 crewmen of the SS Watertown, had a freak accident on their vessel. The men were cleaning the cargo tank of the oil tanker but were suffocated by gas fumes and died quite quickly. They were buried at sea near the Mexican coast, but the next day one of the crew members reported seeing James and Michael's faces in the waves. The man saw their faces for a solid 10 seconds before they faded away, and it kept happening over the course of the next few days. When the vessel arrived in New Orleans, the paranormal events were relayed to the crew's employers, and they suggested trying to photograph the occurrence. Employers just don't care. They're like, oh, photograph that, I can sell it for millions. Goodbye. So Captain Tracy bought a camera for the rest of the trip, and when the faces did appear again, they captured this image. And ironically, after the crew of the ship changed, the sightings were no longer reported either. So I mean, maybe these two were just playing a really sick joke on their former crewmen. They're like, ha ha ha, we may be dead, but at least we're having a good time. Now at number 2 is the little boy, and this picture was captured so clearly that I'm still like, is this Photoshop? Is this actually real? You guys tell me. So back in 2008, Neil Sandbach, a photographer, was on a farm in Hertfordshire taking pictures for a couple who wanted to have their wedding at the location. When Neil was going through his digitals later on, he saw one picture that had what appeared to be a glowing ghost figure of a little boy peeking out from the corner of the building. And can you see he's so clearly there? I can even make out his facial features, which creeped me out even more because his face looks more like a skull than it does a face. The couple later asked the farm staff if they had ever seen anything paranormal or weird at the farm, and a lot of them shared that they had seen a young boy in white night clothes. So I mean, say no more. I hope you didn't have your wedding there. That's just not a good omen to start your married life on. You know what I mean? Ghosts of little boys? No. I'm trying for happily ever after, not happily never after. You know what I mean? And finally, at number 1 is the man. This footage was captured on a car's dash cam in Thailand's Surat Thani province back in 2018. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and this car is just going down the highway when a man in blue shorts and a white shirt literally materializes out of nowhere. The car goes right through the man, and when the man turned around to check, the ghost was nowhere to be found. I just don't get how he appeared from literally nothing. He just came out of the ether. Most people who've seen the footage think it was a ghost, whereas skeptics think it was a shadow being reflected in front of the car somehow, which I mean, make that make sense to me. I don't understand how that works. Reflection of what? The rear view mirrors are pointed behind you. What is reflecting in front of me? Please tell me. Exactly, that's what I thought. And I'm not even a car mechanic. Number 10 is the figure. This one comes from Johnny, and no, not Johnny from Top 10 Nerd, just regular other Johnny. He said when he was 14, he lived in this house that had an attic which would always quietly creak. No one ever went up there since it was always locked, and it was filled with just random ancient stuff anyway, so no one was even bothered either. One night, Johnny's parents were out of town, and his friend Cameron slept over. They played video games, ordered pizza, watched TV, etc., and stayed up late. You know how little boys do. But by 3 a.m. they heard what they thought were footsteps in the attic. Scared to death, but also too nervous to check it out, they just convinced themselves it was the oldness and distracted themselves by watching TV. 2 minutes later, they heard a huge slam and the sound of shattering glass in the kitchen, so they ran in there to find nothing. Nothing was broken, nothing was out of place, it was just the strangest thing. 10 minutes later, they heard super loud footsteps in the attic and thought, okay, now we have to check it out. So they got a flashlight and walked towards the attic stairs, and as they pointed it up towards the top of the stairs, they went pale. At the top of the stairs was a tall black figure that was about 8 feet tall. They just stood there watching them and grinning at them, and then it just disappeared into thin air. The boys called the police and they found no traces of anyone in the house. But that could have easily been like Slender Man's brother or cousin, I swear to God. Coming in at Number 9 is the lady in the pink dress. Always a lady, and I'm pleasantly surprised she's in a pink dress this time, not a white one. Shared by Reddit user TwistedSTL636, they said they had a huge Catholic family, and this story happened to them in the 80s. There was a huge party at the user's grandma's house, and his great-grandma lived with her grandma as she had dementia, and so she needed the care. A bunch of aunts and uncles were cleaning the house after the party, and the great-grandma went to her room. At about 3 a.m. she came out and she said, "There's a man outside my window." The group go to her room, look out the window, and find no one. Outside the window was just a bench, and so blaming it on her dementia, the group told her to go back to sleep. She came out literally a second later again, saying, "There's a man at my window," and again the same thing happened. They went to the window, checked, there was no one there. They finally asked her what she was seeing, and she said he wanted her to come outside and meet the pretty lady on the bench wearing the pink dress. At this point, they went out and actually searched outside and found nothing, so one of the aunts actually ended up sleeping next to the great-grandma, you know, for supervision purposes. The next day, the user's grandma gets a call saying the great-grandma's sister died the night before. The grandma asked some questions, you know, like what happened, was she sick, etc. And the family replied saying, "We don't know, but she definitely saw it coming since she fell asleep in bed wearing her favorite pink dress." At number 8, we have the eyeless boy. This one's from an anonymous guy who shared that when he was 10 years old, he woke up in bed at around 3 a.m. to the sound of someone coming into his room and sitting on the edge of his bed. He assumed it was his mum, but when he opened his eyes, a boy without eyes was just sitting there. Black holes for sockets, just straight up sitting there. They stared at each other for a while, and then the guy blinked and the boy was gone. 5 years later, his girlfriend came over to do some work and she slept over that night. Again, at around 3 a.m., she suddenly sat up, pointed to the corner of the ceiling, and then went back to sleep. When he finally got her awake, she said, "On the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there in a Spider-Man pose just staring at me." And remembering the boy he had seen 5 years prior, he freaked out and told her the story. Now fast forward another 5 years, and at this point he has a 2-year-old kid with the same girlfriend. They were living in his old house, and his daughter started waking up at 3 a.m. every night and talking. But she'd say the same thing every single night, and one night the guy just playfully asked her, you know, like, "Who are you talking to?" And she said, "It's a little boy, he's nice, he's lost and looking for his mommy." And honestly, I didn't even feel bad for the ghost kid until that, like, that's so sad. That broke my heart. Either way, the daughter kept seeing the little boy every night till the family eventually moved house, so there's that. But I wonder what happened to his eyes though, that's a bit That's a bit sus. Filling our number 7 slot is the neighbor. This was from Redditor Racing Barracarts, who said their neighbor died a month ago, and after she died, really weird things started happening in the user's house and her other neighbors' houses. The user started hearing shuffling up and down her hallway at 3 a.m. and she assumed it was always her roommate, but then she found out that her roommate worked overnight, so he was never even home at that time. The roommate moved out and things went even more downhill. The user started hearing a knocking at her front door every night at 3 a.m. She'd check outside and no one would be there, so initially she just thought she was being ding-dong ditched until one time. And yes, we've all ding-dong ditched, let's face it, let's admit it right now. This one time, the knock came, she went to check, no one was there, and as she was closing the door, the knock came back again, and the door was partially open, so she knew for sure there was no one outside. After that, the user would sleep 2 hours a night max because she was so scared. Other things started happening, like her windows would slide open, her drawers would close by themselves. Months later, her and her fiance were about to go to bed when they saw a shadow figure run into the room, into their closet. A few minutes later, it came outside and lay in between them and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" As clear as day. Now the ghosts and the occurrences aren't the neighbor who died, but they all did start because she died. Now all the users' neighbors claim the knocking happened to them too, but as old grandmas, they all just dismissed it as ding-dong ditching, which it's not. Now at number 6 is Bill. This one's from Reddit user CallMeBlue213, who said 6 years ago he was visiting some family in Alaska. He borrowed a car to drive there and ended up losing control and hitting a tree. It was absolutely freezing and there was no point staying in the car any longer, as it was 3 a.m. now and the windows were smashed, so it wasn't even warm inside. He went outside and saw some headlights coming his way and flagged the car down. It ended up being a trucker named Bill, who thankfully dropped the user off at a small town 10 miles ahead. When the user got off, he said his thank yous and his byes to Bill and then went into a little restaurant to eat. He told the waitress that a trucker named Bill had helped him, and she said that was impossible, since only one trucker drove down that road called Bill and he had died 6 years before that. Chills went up his spine, goosebumps covered him completely. The waitress even described Bill for the user and the descriptions matched completely. Good guy Bill. Honestly, I don't mind ghosts at all when they're nice and helpful like this. When they're mean and possessing you, that it's just like, no. There's no need for that, man. Like, stop. Coming in at number 5 is the motion detector. This one comes from Daniela, who said there are motion detectors all over her family house. For a solid 3-month period, Daniela lived alone in her house while her dad lived with his girlfriend. One night, she was sleeping at the girlfriend's house, and at around 3 a.m., the burglar alarm went off at her own house. The police informed them the motion detector had gone off in Daniela's dad's room, even though no one was there. Her dad assumed it was broken and had the whole system replaced, but the same thing happened a few days later at the same time. He replaced it again, and it happened again, and after that point, they just gave up. Each time it went off at 3 a.m. and no one would be present in the room, and Daniela was 100% sure it was a spirit of her mum who had passed away when she was younger, because according to her, she's haunting them because everyone they knew hated her dad's new girlfriend, so it was probably like a warning sign or something. At number 4 are the eyes. This one comes from Lily, who said that when she was around 4 or 5 years old, quite scared of the dark, so she'd sleep in between her parents. Her parents' bed was right in front of the bathroom door, and one night she woke up at 3 a.m. and just couldn't get back to sleep. Now she sat up and looked into the bathroom and saw a huge pair of red and orange glowing eyes staring back at her, almost burning a hole in her because of how laser focused they were. Lily tried waking up her parents, but they just wouldn't wake up. She started freaking out when she heard a woman's voice calling out to her from the bathroom. She assumed the nice voice belonged to the ugly eyes, and although she doesn't remember what it said, they were motherly things. Either way, she was horrified, and the next day she told her parents what had happened, and they told her it was a nightmare. Of course they did. Of course they said that. Honestly, I feel like it could have been like the ghost of a scorned mother who lost her own child and was trying to like abduct Lily maybe. Like it was saying motherly things, it was staring holes through her, like what else could it have been? Do you guys have any thoughts? Let me know. Filling at number 3.
Use Kayak to find the hotel you want at the price you want. Download the Kayak app now.
Slot is the melody. This story is from Roy, who said he was playing on the trampoline with his friend Jay, and Jay was telling him how his sister sometimes hears their grandparents' piano play by itself when she's home alone. Mind you, they were hanging out at Jay's grandparents' house that day, and so Roy was like, that's bullshit, and didn't believe him. Later on, Roy went in to get his iPad, and as he was making his way downstairs to the front door, he starts hearing the piano play. It wasn't just a random few notes. Roy was out here listening to some Fur Elisa like melody. He ran out of the house and found Jay's dad outside painting the house, not having heard He gave Jay the iPad and told him that he definitely believed him, and they went about their day. That night, Roy was sleeping over and everyone was asleep in the house when around 3 AM, Roy started hearing the piano play again. He wanted to see it in front of his eyes to really know it wasn't a hoax, so he made his way to the basement where the piano was. He opened the door and went inside and literally watched this piano play itself. The door behind him closed and then wouldn't open again, and Roy just stood there scared as hell watching this piano play. 5 minutes later, when the piano stopped, the door opened and he ran upstairs and cried. The only people who knew how to play the piano were Jay's grandma, who was dead, and his grandpa, who didn't live in that house. Jay told Roy how his grandma always wanted to play for him, but he was always too small and would run around and just not listen to her. Well, she sure as shit made Roy listen, didn't she? Just locked him in the basement there. Please don't lock it, Grandma, that's a bit scary, isn't it? Just let him hear you play. Now at number 2 is Happy Birthday. This one's from Reddit user bhoppy20, who said right after he graduated college, he was staying with his girlfriend at her sister's house. They slept in the basement while everyone else slept in their own rooms, and at around 3 AM he gets woken up by the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs to the basement. Curious as to who would come down at that time, he opened his eyes to see a man with long dark hair sitting at the foot of his bed. Mans look like a moonlit anime character out here. Either way, he was shocked but also adult enough to assume he was just sleepy and seeing things, so he just went back to bed. The next morning, he told his girlfriend about his dream, and she freaked out and said, "Oh my god, we forgot to make a cake for my brother." Except she only had one sister. Apparently, years ago when she lived in Vietnam, her parents had miscarried her little brother, and so to honor him, they would bake him a cake every year on his birthday. But the night before, they'd forgotten to do so the whole family agreed the boyfriend must have seen the brother all grown up and sad about not getting his cake that year. The boyfriend was also pissed he had no idea about the brother to begin with, but that's a fight for another day. And finally, at number 1 is Slenderman 2.0. This one's from Redditor B4455, who said when she was 7 years old, she shared a room with her youngest sister. One night, their parents had put them to sleep, but she just couldn't fall asleep. Her sister was fast asleep while she was just staring at the ceiling. Story of my life, honestly, I do that all the time. Either way, after staring at the ceiling, then the walls, she looked at the clock and realized it was 3 AM. She decided to, really just close her eyes and try her best to fall asleep. Before she did, her eyes scanned the door and saw that someone was standing there. An enormously tall figure, as tall as the doorway itself. It had long arms and legs and had no facial features whatsoever. It was just glowing yellow, not moving, not talking. She hid under the covers because at that age, that's the best protection you can think of, and when she looked out again, it was still there. She did this twice more before screaming her lungs out. Her dad ran into the room straight through the figure and asked what was wrong. The figure had disappeared and she never ended up seeing it again, but the sighting scarred her so much she still can't sleep alone or with the lights fully off. Extremely tall, featureless, long-limbed man figure. That is most definitely Slenderman himself. Confirmed. It's him. He got into the house. He's out of the game. I'm kidding, I know he's real. I know it's not just a game.
At number 10, we have Honest Abe. Let's start off this list with a ghost that could never tell a lie. The ghostly sightings of Abraham Lincoln is probably the most reported. A lot of people who come through on tours or who are living in the residence say that they've seen the tall man with a beard who looks very similar to Abraham Lincoln. When they try to approach this figure, he disappears into thin air. I hope his ghost is still around. I want him to see what freeing the slaves did. He probably is listening to the latest Kendrick Lamar album like, oh yeah, this was the right call. This whole album is fire. What I want to know is whether he looks like a regular old Honest Abe or if he has a massive bullet hole in his head from that time he got shot. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I guess he could always put his hat on to cover it. At number 9 we have Andrew Jackson. Most of this list is probably going to be dead presidents or political people. That might be kind of fun. After you die you get to hang out with politicians from the past. They would all have crazy war stories and you could talk about how they helped America. Well, some of them would talk about how they helped America. The others would talk about how they screwed over America. It would be a range of perspectives is what I'm saying. I don't know enough about American history to know where Andrew Jackson stood, but I do know that his ghost has been seen throughout the White House. Not only seen, but heard as well. Apparently he likes to stomp around and yells quite a bit, and he's not a very polite ghost. Some guests have said they've heard him swearing. Maybe he's upset about how America's developing, or he could just be watching the Nationals game. At number 8 we have David Burns. It's not just dead presidents that get to stick around the White House for eternity. If you got a big enough grudge against the president's home, then your spirit might just march in there and demand justice. David Burns was a man who was forced to give up his land rights for the construction of the White House. That would piss me off too, to be honest. I would be like, you can build it anywhere else. It was 1790. You know how much land there is up for grabs? Just go take it. Well, he was really salty about this, and in the end he got a way better deal because his ghost gets to live in the White House. Security officers have reported hearing a disembodied voice say, "I am David Burns." If I was a ghost in the White House, I would do stuff like poop with the door open and try on all the president's suits. At number 7 we have a demonic cat. Ghosts and demons are in the same vein, and this one was too spooky to leave off this list. So apparently in the basement of the White House there is a demonic cat. If you ever come across this thing, it will first look like an adorable black kitten, but as it moves closer to you, it will start to grow and change until it becomes a horrifying monstrosity and probably makes you pee your pants. Now this spooky demonic force had never harmed anyone, but its presence is apparently attached to a major disaster about to strike America. The cat was seen before the stock market crashed in the 1920s, which caused the Great Depression, and once again before Kennedy was assassinated. At number 6 we have Abigail Adams. Abigail is one of the best old-timey names of all time. Whenever I hear Abigail, I think of people living on a farm in the 1800s and all they have for light is like a little oil lamp that if it falls over it'll burn down their whole life. But this Abigail isn't just any ghost, it's the ghost of Abigail Adams, who was the wife of former President John Adams. She has been seen walking through the building, seen in mirror reflections in the bathroom, and she has also been seen carrying laundry, which is not a joke. This is true. The ghost of Abigail Adams has been carrying piles of ghostly laundry. Like, girl, you're dead, your clothes can't get dirty anymore. And if there's any time you should stop doing chores, it's in the afterlife. Could you imagine being stuck folding laundry as a ghost? But on the same token, I would love to have a ghost in my home that does all my chores for me. That would be amazing. At number 5 we have the young African American woman. We've got a mystery ghost on our hands. The ghostly figure of an African American woman has been seen in the White House, which is a nice change of pace, a little diversity in there. The reason she is a mystery is because no one knows the origin of this ghost, but she has been seen several times. Some people think that she could be the ghost of a former slave or perhaps the mistress of a former president. The people who have seen her said that she is usually wearing a yellow dress and seems to have on some fancy shoes. This could count out her being the ghost of a slave because she's dressed so nice. At number 4 we have William Henry Harrison. Dying while you were still president is a surefire way to make sure your ghost will want to stick around in the Oval Office. From what I understand, ghosts are created when someone has unfinished business, and not finishing your term as president is pretty much as unfinished as it gets. William Henry Harrison caught pneumonia and bit the dust, making him the first president to die while still in office, and he also served the shortest term ever, which was only 31 days. On one side, that's a huge bummer. You finally win and then you die. On the other side, you got to die on top. There's not really a better place to die than as the leader of a...
That's why I love bourbon barbecue wings!
Wow. That was something.
You didn't like it.
No.
I mean, I used to sing on cruises.
What made you stop?
The cruises. Bourbon barbecue wings!
Of a country, it doesn't get much better than that. Now his ghost has been seen clomping around. Apparently his favorite place to hang out is the attic. I mean, he was the president all the way back in the 1840s. He's probably a little bit of an old fogey. I bet he likes to have his alone time, and I can't imagine he has a lot in common with the other ghosts in the building. This guy wants to talk about the dangers of pneumonia, and everyone's like, dude, we get it, we have penicillin now, you can chill out. At number 3 we have Willie Lincoln. The son of Abraham Lincoln died when he was just 11 years old. The cause of death was a train wreck. Obviously, this was very hard for his mother and father to bear. His mother, especially Mary Lincoln, couldn't handle losing her son at such a young age. She wanted to bring him back, to have just a few more moments with him before he moved on to the other side. So she started hosting seances in the White House. I'm not sure how the voters felt about that. I'm pretty sure witchcraft was frowned upon back then, but losing her child is one of the worst things that can happen to a person. After performing this ritual, Mary said her son came to visit her in the night. Some people think that the ghost still walks the halls to this day. At number 2, we have Dolly Madison. She is one of the many former first ladies and has left her mark on America maybe forever. On the White House property, there is one of the most beautiful rose gardens, and it was planted by Dolly Madison way back in the 19th century. It stood the test of time, but there was one lady who did try to change the whole layout of the garden. Ellen Wilson wasn't a big fan of all those roses, and she wanted to get the whole garden flipped so she could do her own spin on the place. Apparently, when the workers came to dig up all the vegetation, the ghost of Dolly Madison appeared, and they were too afraid to keep working. Her ghost showed up and was like, "Excuse me? I don't think you are going to take away my roses. Do you know how hard it was to get all these roses in here back in 1810? The garden stays." At number 1, we have the haunted fireplace. For the number 1 spot, we have one of the funniest haunted things I could find. This story comes from the mouth of Jenna Bush, who is of course the daughter of former President George W. Bush. She said that one night she was sleeping in the White House and the fireplace in her room started blasting some sort of 1920s sounding music. So there was either a ghost playing some old-timey music or a party going on behind a secret door that was behind the fireplace. That would freak me out. Another time she said the same thing happened, but it sounded like opera music. After this happened a few times, we'd be like, "Hey, do you have like any Black Keys or at least something off the top 40? Like if you're gonna keep me up all night, can you at least play something that I know the words to?"
Starting off at number 10 now, we have The Lady. In February 2017, a story appeared in a number of newspapers. Tim Welty, a 25-year-old from Virginia, was visiting his parents. They had asked him to fix their computer, which he did. He also set up some cameras so that his parents could keep an eye on their dog when they weren't in the house. They were all very freaked out when this was one of the first things they saw on that camera. There appears to be some sort of figure hovering over the sofa that none of them actually saw in person. Now they believe it's a Civil War maid who died there many years ago. Although they didn't see it, they believe their Cocker Spaniel definitely did. The dog appears to be staring right at the figure, its ears pointed up in alarm. Next up at number 9 now, we have Zoe. That's the name of this dog owned by Zach Clark. Zoe was just a puppy in this video. Zach picked up the camera when she started growling and barking at seemingly nothing. At one point, she even backs up in fear. Zach titled the video, "Dog Sees a Ghost," so it seems like he's already made up his mind on what it is. But what do you guys think? He said there was nobody in the house at that time, just him and Zoe. Is she just being a daft puppy, or is this canine contact with the afterlife? More coming in at number 8 now with Annie. We join Cy Jarvis for this video. Now he explains that his dog Annie kept growling at the door at around 10:30 at night. He thought it was just because she wanted to be let out, but when he opened the door, she still wouldn't budge. She just kept staring. The video has gained almost 2 million views on YouTube with almost 6,000 comments of people discussing what exactly was making Annie behave in the way she did. Check it out, see what you guys think.
Come on. Come on. Annie. Come on.
Next up at number 7 now, we have the bark. The dogs we've looked at so far have been a little bit quiet when seeing these alleged ghosts. Perhaps it's fear, but this dog seems to have a very different reaction. It was uploaded by Valerie Brown in 2013. Have a little listen. I think the weird part is that the dog seems to actually move its attention as if it's tracking a moving object. Sometimes dogs do just bark at one spot for absolutely no reason, but this one clearly seems to be following movement. Its ears are pricked up and it seems quite skittish. It's either seeing something or it's a very good actor. Coming at number 6 now, we have Pixie. This is a Jack Russell Terrier that works as a ghost hunter. You heard me right. Pixie is part of a team that investigates the paranormal. They take Pixie along because they say she showed an aptitude for detecting ghosts. They analyze her body language to see if she can sense something that her owners can't. They look for when she stops unexpectedly, sniffs the air, barks, or if she's agitated at all in any way. In the video you're seeing now, Pixie is taken to the Pickering Creek Inn, which has had a number of different ghost sightings over the years. Pixie is drawn to the basement where an old underground railway used to run under the inn. Was it just a lucky guess, or is Pixie onto something? Moving on to number 5 now, we have the orb. This is a picture that's been shared a lot online, appearing to show a dog playing with a globule orb, otherwise known as a ghost orb. Now, ghost hunters say these often show up in photos and videos, and they believe they are the souls of a deceased person. They say humans struggle to see these things. Cameras can pick them up though, and animals, especially dogs. The person who took this picture believes that's exactly what's going on here. They said the dog is investigating the orb that the picture taker simply couldn't see at the time. At the number 4 spot now, we have the rocking chair. This clip was uploaded by Squidward Loser in 2009 and simply titled "Dog Gets Scared by Ghost," and that's pretty much exactly what seems to happen. The dog is just chilling on the floor when all of a sudden this happens. As the chair rocks, a noise can be heard off camera. The dog, although scared, goes to investigate the noise, which sounds like it's moving back onto the screen. Then again, we see the chair rocking towards the end of the video, seeming to confirm that the first time wasn't just a fluke. Next up, number 3 now, we have Louie. This 6-month-old beagle was caught on camera barking and growling at something in the kitchen of a house. He seemed to focus the majority of his attention on an open cupboard in front of him. The uploader said that Louie had been known in the past to wake them up in the middle of the night, barking and growling at something unseen. They usually have to let him out so he can patrol the house, and once he's had a little look, he can calm down and go back to sleep. This time was different though. Nothing seemed to calm him. Little Louie just kept barking at that cupboard. See what you guys make of it. Moving on to number 2 now, we have The Mummy. This clip was uploaded by Megan Brooks to YouTube in 2014. She titled it, "Dog Sees Ghost, Protects Owner." What from? Well, it seems to be this Egyptian statue at the end of her hallway. Take a look. As the clip goes on, it's quite clear that the dog has to be scared of the statue and nothing else. There's nothing else there really, except for a few boxes and papers. When this clip was first shared around online, people instantly started speculating that the dog can actually see the physical embodiment of an ancient Egyptian curse. Is there some sort of spirit attached to the statue that humans simply can't see? Either way, the dog seems nervous as to what he sees, but not scared enough to run away. And finally, number 1 now, guys, we have Alfie. That's the name of this dog owned by Tracy Albrighton. She uploaded this clip in September 2014. Little Alfie is up on her bed and just barking incessantly at the bedroom door. Check it out. Now at first I thought this might be the light on the door, that he's seeing, but no, he doesn't seem to be looking at that. He seems to be looking at something actually standing in the doorway. It just seems to get creepier as it goes on. He's not just barking either, you can also hear him growling as if he's ready for a fight. Those who say he's seen a ghost insist that it must be a malevolent one, an evil spirit of sorts. I think the creepiest part of this is the fact that Alfie keeps staring at the same spot in the doorway, which means whatever ghost he sees isn't moving, it's just staring right back at them.
At number 10 is King Pemion. Pamion, a crowned king of spirits, is a regal figure atop a camel and heralded by your call through the dance of the Ouija board's planchette. Now, if your board is speaking gibberish, it may be because this demon speaks only in tongue and will only speak the practitioner's native language when commanded to. But you might not want to actually speak to this guy, as Pamion and his associated demons are obedient companions of Lucifer and always demand a sacrifice, an offering to appease the accompanying kings who serve beneath his dominion. Yet with any encounter with the supernatural, you must tread carefully. Pamion's power is matched only by his complexity. Whispers suggest that he was once a dominion, while others debate his cherubic origins. You know, the cherub? No, not those little babies with wings, but the biblically accurate angel with 5 heads, 4 wings, and covered in eyes? Well, Pamion was said to once be one of those types of angels before he got buddied up with Lucy. Texts like the Gotia and the Liber Officium Spirituum, sorry if I butchered that, reveal Pamion's insight into science, treasures, and even Earth's elements, while the Livre de Espirits adds truth answering and world affairs to that list of abilities you may gain access to, assuming your sacrifice is worthy. He can also grant power and positions, future sight, spirit summoning, and even temporary reanimation, which is probably why they say not to play with the Ouija board in cemeteries. But before you pull out your Ouija board and start summoning, if you're enjoying this video so far, subscribing to Most Amazing and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is Zozo. For all of you who don't know, Zozo is the most famous demon associated with the Ouija board. You see, Zozo isn't your typical run-of-the-mill demon. In fact, some sources claim that he exhibits poltergeist-like behavior, throwing around furniture and whatnot. But here's the kicker. The effects linger long after the Ouija board session ends, whether you properly close the session or not. The chilling presence of Zozo can haunt you for years. It's like having an uninvited guest that just won't leave, no matter how many times you ask it to. That if you find yourself face to face with this malevolent force, it's crucial, actually imperative, that you shut down the Ouija board right away, and to be doubly safe, why not consider giving that board a fiery farewell? Yeah, that's right, burn it. The Z to the O to the Z to the O movement on the planchette is your cue to bid adieu and consign that board to the flame. Now, allegedly, the more we talk about him, the stronger he becomes, so let's move on to the next demon, shall we? At number 8 is President Boer. Pseudo-Demonarchia Demonum. Holy cow. This great president of hell commands 50 legions of demons and materializes under celestial embrace of Sagittarius, whatever that means. Now tread carefully, because wielding a Ouija board to beckon Buer might unleash a tempest of consequences. But why would you want to summon this demon from hell in the first place? Well, maybe if you were a fan of myth, as this demon is sometimes described as a centaur, but it can also take the form of whatever the hell that is. A lion's head and a peculiar symphony of 5 legs, which walks in all directions. This demon is said to unveil the mysteries of natural and moral philosophy, logic, and esoteric secrets of flora. That's right, his dominion extends to the botanical realm, granting insights into herbs and plants and qualities of uses. But his influence can bless more than just esoteric farmers. His touch possesses healing powers, capable of mending even the most profound human infirmities. Yet, dear voyagers of the mystical, be wary of the strings you pull, because with Buer's knowledge comes a weighty responsibility, and tampering with the arcane invites both enlightenment and peril. Buer embodies wisdom and potency, a dichotomy that dances on the edge of discovery and darkness. So should you dare beckon Buer through the Ouija board's eternal gateway, brace yourself for the journey that could forever alter the fabric of your reality. Or just don't. At number 7 is Veilfar. This Duke of Hell, or should I say Donkey of Hell? While Veilfar might promise you the world, or at least a bag of swag, you're essentially opening a door to forces that might not be all that interested in keeping their end of the bargain. He's the Duke of Hell after all, and that comes with legions of otherworldly troublemakers, so not really the kind of RSVP you'd want. So before you whip out the old Ouija board and decide to give Veilfar a call, just remember that there are risks and consequences involved. Perhaps it's best to stick to the realm of curiosity and exploration, rather than diving headfirst into the unknown. But if you are going to call him, it's noted that he's a manager of a rather unique department in hell. You see, he's in charge of cultivating good relationships among, wait for it, thieves. Yeah, you heard me right. Veilfar is the ultimate matchmaker for those looking to dabble in the art of larceny. He's like the Cupid of the criminal underworld, except instead of arrows, he wields temptation. Legend has it that Veilfar has a knack for tempting individuals into a life of theft. He's got a charming allure, a sort of devilishly enticing charisma that convinces people to satch a little something here and there. But it doesn't grant you immunity to being caught, and has been known to put people in risky situations. At number 6 is Gamgin. According to certain texts, Gamgin takes the form of a small horse rather than a peculiar initial appearance for a demon. Gamgin's duties and abilities are quite intriguing. While the Lesser Key of Solomon primarily attributes his responsibilities to teaching liberal arts and providing the accounts of souls that died in sin, describes Gamgin as a marquis who possesses the power to summon the souls of those who drown in the airy bodies. These souls are compelled to answer questions, painting a picture of a sort of supernatural interrogation conducted by this demon. Interestingly, it's said that Gamgin can also work his mysteries on magic souls dwelling in purgatory, allowing them to communicate with the living. At number 5 is Barbas. Barbas, who's also known as Marbas, is a remarkable demon from the Ars Goetia, overseeing an impressive 36 legions of his kind. Imagine this guy as a cosmic Google, unveiling hidden truths and secrets, a supernatural physician capable of healing disease, and an otherworldly engineer with insights into mechanical arts. But here's where it gets truly captivating. Barbas is no ordinary demon, he's a shapeshifter. But let's not forget the gravity of these endeavors, because summoning demons is no game. It's a serious pursuit that requires caution and respect. See, the Ouija board might serve as a conduit, but the consequences of meddling with the unknown can be profound and unsettling. Now, as for the name Barbas, it's Latin with historical significance. From the Latin barba, meaning beards, it ties with hellebore, which is a plant intertwined with witchcraft. At number 4 is Vasago. Vasago is described as a prince of good nature. Magicians who dare to summon him may have their sights on uncovering secrets of time itself, as Vasago is renowned for divulging knowledge of past and future events. Not only that, but lost objects may be rediscovered through his magical influence. But although he's described as a demon in the Lesser Key of Solomon, Vasago's influence extends to the Book of Office of Spirits, where he takes the identity of Usago, an angelic figure with a penchant for kind and just actions. According to this text, if you're seeking to ignite the flames of love or unveil hidden treasures, Vasago might be your go-to celestial matchmaker and treasure hunter. At number 3 is Chronozon. Chronozon is a demon with a mystic legacy that spans centuries, as he made his debut in the 16th century, but has been notably associated with Aleister Crowley's Themalia, where he is the dweller in the abyss, the last barrier to enlightenment. Thelemites believe that confronting Chronozon annihilates the ego, a ticket to deeper understanding. Not sure I'd want to achieve enlightenment with the help of a demon, but I digress. Now, Chronozon isn't your typical demon. He's the demon of dispersion, embodying chaos within the abyss. Crowley's own words, the abyss is a swirling vortex of formlessness, a playground for Chronozon's shenanigans, where meaningless forms pop up and assert their individuality before getting blown away like sand in the wind. Thus, depictions of the demon lean towards some formless, shape-shifting thing, and according to Crowley, summoning it, even while contained within its boundaries, threw sand on top of the triangle to breach it, and then proceeded to attack Nuremberg in the form of a naked savage, forcing him to drive it back with a poking stick? Okay, moral of the story, don't summon this demon unless you've got magic circles or sharp objects, apparently. At number 2 is Agares, an ancient duke from the eastern enclaves of the supernatural. Picture an old sage riding a crocodile with a hawk perched on his arm. Agares, a linguistic virtuoso, imparts forgotten languages and has a knack for tracking down runaways. His powers can even extend to causing earthquakes, apparently. Summoning Agares could be akin to calling upon a whole legion of 31 or 36 loyal demon companions, which is way too much evil to break down in this video alone, but I doubt you'd want your very own demonic entourage. Or maybe I should speak for myself. At number 1 is Baal. Baal or Baal is a king of the underworld who holds a prominent spot in various demonological works like the Lesser Key of Solomon, Pseudo-Demonarcavia Demonarum, I totally messed that up, I'm not gonna try again. With the power to render men invisible and commanding a staggering 36 legions of demons, Baal is not your typical dinner guest. But what exactly happens when you decide to ring him up with a Ouija board? Well, if legends hold true, summoning Baal might just bring about some mind-boggling experiences. Reports suggest that Baal has the uncanny ability to bestow power of invisibility upon mortals. Imagine the possibilities, but with any supernatural encounter, there's always a flip side. Baal's power and influence could lead to unforeseen consequences. You see, these texts hint at his ability to gather the favor of others, but what if that favor comes with a price? Perhaps in your pursuit of popularity, you find yourself ensnared in a web of intrigue and manipulation, unable to escape its supernatural grip. Or, you could lose your soul. Now let's address the elephant, or should I say the multi-headed cat-toad man in the room. If Baal were to manifest in your midst, the sheer sight of him alone could leave you questioning the very fabric of reality, or your sanity. Remember, summoning demons isn't a game, and it's important to approach such practices with caution and respect. These ancient rituals are steeped in history and belief systems, and whether you personally believe in their efficacy or not, the psychological impact of attempting to summon a powerful entity cannot be ignored. That's it. Like and subscribe. The enigmatic spirit from the depths of the 16th century's Pseudo-Demonarchia invites both enlightenment and peril. The fabric of your reality, or just don't. World, or at least a bag of swag, you're essentially opening the head first into the unknown. But it should also be noted that forget that. Now, Gamion's duties and abilities are quite intriguing, conducted by this demon. Interestingly, it's said that allowing them to communicate with the living. Skip. Yeah, forget this part. At number 5 is Barbas. Barbas also...
How do we decide what hotel to book?
Fear not, I got you. Choice Hotels has a hotel for every type of stay. Like a comfort with the kiddos.
Spacious.
That's what they all say. Stay twice and get a free night when you book direct at choicehotels.com.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have bees. A lot of us know bees as pretty harmless and are kind of cute little pollinators, unless of course you're allergic or terrified. But truthfully, bees normally do a lot more good than harm. That was, of course, until an experiment in the 1970s went awry and caused a new crossbred bee. This experiment was to take a regular honeybee and breed it with a bee that is found in Africa that produces a lot more honey. And of course, the goal was to produce a manageable bee that would also be able to provide more honey than a regular honeybee. Well, the bees that came out were a lot less manageable, and they didn't even make more honey. After this experiment ended, however, the bees got out into the environment, and the 80s saw the beginning of the trouble. The bees are not only aggressive towards other kinds of bees, which creates a huge problem, but they are also very aggressive towards humans. And when these bees sting, their stinger stays with them, so they can sting multiple times. Victims of these swarms receive 10 times as many stings as regular swarms. They react to disturbances 10 times faster, and they will also chase the disturbance a quarter of a mile. Imagine. These bees have actually caused at least 1,000 deaths, so it's safe to say that this is one experiment gone horribly wrong. In our number 9 spot today, we have lions. In the 1980s, at the Chatbir Zoo in Chandigarh, India, they started an experimental program where they would breed together a domestic lion, which is a bit smaller and has less of a shaggy mane, with an African lion in the hopes that they could be introduced to the wild and help with the dwindling population of wild lions in India. The zoo found 2 African lions that were being used in a circus and brought them in to breed with their 2 Asiatic lions. When the cubs were born, it was clear that this was already a mistake, as the cubs all had severely weak back legs. They were having extreme trouble walking, and as they got older, their immune systems started to fail. By 2000, they had bred more than 70 of these hybrid lions, and they finally decided to stop the program, and all the males were given vasectomies in order to stop any reproduction. There are laws that prohibit them from killing animals, so they were simply just waiting for them to die naturally. When there's a dwindling population of lions, it's insane to me that they wasted 20 years trying to do this when they could have just simply bred the lions that they did have. In our number 8 spot today, we have the human Z. One of the most contentious and ethically charged endeavors pursued by Ilya Ivanovich Ivanov, an extremely controversial Russian biologist, was his endeavor to produce a hybrid offspring between humans and apes. The goal actually was to create a superhuman soldier for military purposes, and as early as 1910, Ivanov presented his concept of achieving such a feat through the means of artificial insemination during the World Congress of Zoologists in Graz, Austria. In the 1920s, Ivanov embarked on a series of experiments aimed at creating a human-ape hybrid in French Guinea. 3 female chimpanzees were selected as potential surrogate mothers, and the experiment began. However, despite his efforts, Ivanov was unable to achieve a successful pregnancy and bring about the desired hybrid offspring. Thank God. Upon his return to the Soviet Union in 1929, Ivanov sought to organize a new set of experiments involving the use of non-human ape seminal fluid and human volunteers. What human would volunteer for that? I don't know, and I don't want to know. However, these plans were met with setbacks, notably the demise of his last remaining orangutan, which delayed the commencement of the proposed endeavors. Ivanov's pursuit of creating a human-ape hybrid was met with considerable controversy and skepticism. Fair enough. The scientific community was divided, with many dismissing his ideas as unfeasible and scientifically dubious. Nevertheless, his experiments reflect a dark chapter in the history of crossbreeding experiments, highlighting the extreme lengths some scientists were willing to go to in the pursuit of scientific knowledge, even if it meant transgressing the boundaries of ethical conduct. In our number 7 spot today, we have the zonkey. Another one of the strange and unsettling experiments from Ivanov involved the creation of hybrid offspring known as zonkies, or zebrases.